Chapter 731. Spear of Death. Ron raised both his hands, and the black thread in his hands enlarged, turning into a pitch-black bone spear that flickered under the sunlight. At this moment, Ron's fighting spirit reached its peak, and powerful death divine energy spread out in the air. Behind Ron, a huge malevolent death god figure appeared, ferocious and intimidating. M4XS. At this moment, Ron even used soul ignition. Death divine energy? Seeing that black thread, Sophia's eyelids twitched, and she faintly smiled. Not bad. You actually have death divine energy. Although I don't know where your death divine energy comes from. Do you think you have the ability to deal with me? As Sophia spoke, she stretched out her hand, and with a pung, a small black flame appeared out of thin air, pulsating in her palm. Destruction divine energy also appeared in Sophia's palm, resonating with Ron's death divine energy. For a moment, both sides used their divine energy as their final trump card. Storm God, Slaying Blade, Sophia shouted, and with a hug, two crescent blades crossed, and the demonic wings on her back spread out. Black flames engulfed half the sky like a huge dragon, and at this moment, a huge demon figure appeared behind Sophia, terrifying and malevolent. Rumble, rumble, rumble. At this moment, the two powerhouses of the god domain used their divine energy, and two black balls of light appeared in the sky, sprinkling down tens of thousands of rays of light. The powerful force caused the space to collapse and even the earth to shake. This kind of power, Frigga's delicate face became panicked. At this moment, she no longer envied Ron's power. Instead, it was replaced by deep hope. Ron's strength had far surpassed hers. Of course, Frigga didn't know that Ron had divine energy. Dying, Ron used all his strength and threw out the Spear of Death. The powerful Spear of Death pierced through the void, and even the power of domains melted under the deterrence of divine energy. You're the one who will die, Sophia sneered. Storm God slaying slash spun out. It was as if a storm had swept through the sky. The powerful wind blades swept across the ground, capable of slicing apart boulders weighing dozens of tons. Not good, Dodge. Whether it was the Burning Legion or the Noah Continent's allied army, all of them retreated at this moment because they felt the arrival of death. Boom! Destruction divine energy and death divine energy collided with each other, resulting in a loud explosion. The huge momentum caused the entire space to tremble. Countless cracks appeared in the sky, and a gust of wind blew across the ground. Countless flaming rocks fell from the sky as if the end of the world had arrived. Not long after, everything returned to normal. Did he win? At this time, the experts of the Noah Continent's allied forces poked their heads out from the ground and looked around. They hoped to see a good result. However, they were soon disappointed. At this moment, Ron stood quietly in the air, his body slightly trembling. A trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth, slowly expanding. Yes, Ron had been defeated. Although he did not die, he had exhausted all of his strength. The movements in Quebec City became more and more intense. The entire city was on fire, as if responding to Sophia's destruction divine energy. Sophia stood in front of Ron with her arms crossed and a sneer on her face, as if she had expected this outcome. I said, "You're no match for me at all. Even if you have divine energy, it's useless." Sophia glanced at Ron. "But I'm curious, where did your divine energy come from? Are you really someone from the undead plane?" Divine energy was a power that only gods could possess. It was impossible for ordinary experts of the divine realm to possess divine energy. Divine energy could only be bestowed by god-tier experts, and only those closest to them could possess it. Sophia's destruction divine energy came from her uncle Thor. Even ravens could not possess it. Ron took a deep breath. He did not answer Sophia's question. His hand moved slightly, and a small black thread appeared in his hand again. This was the last trace of the divine energy of death. No, I can't give up. Holding the last trace of the divine energy of death, Ron's heart was once again rekindled with hope. Since you don't want to answer, I'm not going to ask anymore. Some things are meaningless even if you know. Sophia smiled, but then her face immediately turned cold. But unfortunately, it seems that you don't intend to give up. With a wave of her hand, a trace of the divine energy of destruction emerged from her heart and turned into a small black flame that kept jumping in the palm of her hand. Ron's eyes widened in surprise, but in the next moment, the expression on his face turned to one of extreme horror. 1, 2, 3, 17, a total of 17. 17 black flames. That was 17 traces of the divine energy of destruction. One after another, traces of the divine energy of destruction jumped out of Sophia's hand as if they were free of charge. They formed a circle around Sophia and constantly spun around her, exuding a mighty and majestic divine energy of destruction. Ron obtained the divine energy of death through the soul converter. He could only condense a trace of the divine energy of death after absorbing the souls of several demons. Ron had never dared to casually use these gods, but now, seeing Sophia take out so much of the divine energy of destruction, he was stunned. Like Ron, every trace of the divine energy of destruction could be activated by Sophia and turned into a powerful force that could destroy heaven and earth. Just a trace of the divine energy of destruction was enough to kill all the experts here. No matter what kind of divine energy it was a power that only gods could possess. Mortals, no matter how powerful they were simply no match for it. Looking at Ron's infinitely shocked expression, Sophia's expression was somewhat smug. She sneered and said, "Lowly native, do you still not understand? The strength of the Burning Legion is not something that you natives can imagine. The things that you value are nothing to us. Divine energy, is something like divine energy of any use to you?" Sophia appeared to be disdainful. She smiled slightly and absorbed all 17 traces of the divine energy of destruction into her body. Ugh! After being provoked by Sophia, Ron suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His body tilted and fell rapidly. After seeing the 17 traces of the divine energy of destruction, Ron's confidence was instantly destroyed. He finally understood that there was an irreparable gap between them. The power from the main plane was simply too powerful. The divine energy of death was Ron's last hope. Unfortunately, this last trace of hope was also destroyed. Ah! A burst of exclamations came from the ground. No one would have thought that Ron, whom they regarded as an invincible god of war, would finally be defeated. Hummelin was shocked. Ron, Kadena cried out in surprise. Quick update, no pop-up, pure text. Chapter 732. Impossible. It's impossible for me to defeat her. It's simply impossible. She's too strong. Ron muttered to himself and slowly closed his eyes. At this time, black flames appeared on his arm and burned fiercely. At this moment, he no longer had any will to fight and could no longer suppress the destructive power that invaded his body. The destructive power began to erupt in his body. As Ron's body fell, the hearts of the allied armies sank. The people of the Scourge Church were stunned. They could not accept the defeat of their god of war. Ron, are you okay? Kadena, Aurora, D-Lin, Shea, and the others hurriedly ran over and helped the unconscious Ron up, anxiously shouting. No matter how they shouted, Ron did not open his eyes again. Ron! Aurora's tears flowed down. She fiercely wiped them away and stared at the sky with resentment. Let's fight it out with her. As soon as Aurora's voice fell, her body turned into a ray of light. Like a fairy, she opened her transparent wings and flew into the air. Aurora, don't! D-Lin wanted to pull her back, but she was a step too late. Aurora's figure had already disappeared. Sophia, who had just defeated Ron and was about to enjoy the fruits of her victory, tilted her head slightly and looked at the little sacred domain expert in front of her. We want. Fairy? Seeing Aurora suddenly appear, Sophia was a little surprised. I'm going to kill you. Aurora's eyes were filled with intense hatred. She suddenly knocked an arrow on her bow and a powerful magic instantly condensed. Aurora drew her bow and nocked an arrow. The delicate dragon-like magic arrow quickly shot out and attacked Sophia like a meteor. "Hum!" Sophia smiled coldly. Without seeing her move, the black flames on her body fiercely rose and swallowed the arrow in an instant. Clang! 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 Aurora shot out dozens of arrows in a row, but unfortunately, they did not even touch the corner of Sophia's clothes. Under the blazing heat, her arrows turned into ashes in an instant. Shea screamed, "No, it's useless. The difference in strength is too great." At this time, Sophia was already impatient. She waved her hand, and a violent, destructive power surged out. "Lowly reptiles, go to hell. Sphere of destruction." Sophia's hands, the sphere of destruction in an instant. The black sphere of light of destruction spun and blasted towards Aurora at an extremely fast speed. "It's over." Everyone closed their eyes in despair, not daring to watch this scene. With Sophia's strength, it was not difficult for her to kill a sacred domain powerhouse with a raise of her hand. Aurora's eyes suddenly opened wide. At this moment, she felt the arrival of death. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Aurora only felt the heat on her face before a soft body slammed into her embrace. Grandma Undine. Aurora was shocked, but at the last moment, Undine suddenly appeared in front of Aurora and used a powerful defensive shield to block the fatal blow for her. However, even with Undine's early-level Godrealm strength, she was unable to block Sophia's attack. The defensive shield shattered, and she was sent flying. "High Priestess!" The elf elders cried out in alarm. Although the elf race's High Priestess Undine did not care about the internal affairs of the elf race for many years, she had always been the spiritual leader of the elf race. What if something happened to her? Grandma. Looking at Undine's miserable state, Aurora's tears flowed down instantly. She could not help but blame herself for being so willful. "How is it? Is the High Priestess all right?" A flying dragon flapped its wings and quickly approached Aurora and Undine. It was Elder Weiss, who could transform into a dragon. At this moment, he glared fiercely at Aurora and asked with concern. At this time, the other elders also rushed over. "I'm fine, I won't die yet." Undine forced her eyes open and looked at the elf elders. "That demon is too strong. We are no match for her." "Then what should we do?" Elder Dobin of the elf race was a little flustered. High Priestess Undine closed her eyes and shook her head without saying a word. "Another one seeking death. You want to stop me with your mere early-level Godrealm strength? You're overestimating yourself." Sophia sneered, her cold eyes looking down at the crowd below. A powerful destructive force was released without restraint, peerless and ferocious, intimidating everyone. In an instant, everyone trembled. It was a kind of indescribable despair. They felt that they were meat on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. "Grandpa Homelin, what should we do?" Delin hugged the unconscious Ron, big drops of tears flowing down her face. She choked with sobs and asked. "There's no other way." Homelin's voice was incomparably low. "Even if we surrender now, she won't let us go. Even if we wag our tails like dogs and beg for mercy, we can't escape death. Let's fight. Let's fight. Let's fight." This sentence ignited everyone's anger and also aroused everyone's desire to fight with their lives on the line. When a person was forced into a desperate situation, a strong fighting spirit was released once again. "Necromancers, get ready." At Vivian's command, all the necromancers turned around, the bone staffs in their hands aimed at the huge demon in the sky. Their eyes were filled with fighting spirit. "Ready, fire." Countless low and mid-level spells mixed with soul attacks bombarded Sophia. The spells that filled the sky were like countless threads, densely packed and innumerable, opening up beautiful fireworks in the sky. "Let's do it too." The elf race also had a common enemy, and they also began to attack Sophia. The Moonblade chariots roared, the hippogriff riders shot out a rain of arrows, and the green elves turned into small deer and threw poisonous spears into the sky. Roar! Hamelin chanted an incantation, and a frost dragon flew into the sky with him. At this moment, the magic beasts also knew that they had a fight with their lives. The dark dragon Firth, fairy dragon Frigga, Beaumont behemoth Hao Qin, and the lion man Fengdiluo, with the body of a lion and the face of a human with the tail of a phoenix, also launched their attacks at this moment. For a moment, the sky was very lively. Whether it was God Realm experts, Sacred Domain experts, or even the most ordinary soldiers, at this moment, they all abandoned the fear in their hearts and launched wave after wave of attacks at the demon in the sky. The Burning Legion didn't have many soldiers left, and only the heavily injured ravens was left to support the situation. As long as Sophia died, the Burning Legion scheme would come to an end. However, would Sophia, who had the strength of a mid-level god realm, die so easily? Ignorant natives. Being attacked by millions of people at the same time, a trace of anger appeared in Sophia's eyes, and she sneered. At this time, she slowly raised her hand, and a powerful destructive force quickly condensed. Annihilation storm. The destructive force shrouded the entire sky like a dark cloud, and then countless annihilation spheres fell from the sky. Boom! 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 The annihilation spheres fell like a meteor shower, bombarding the entire battlefield with thousands of holes. The Noah continent's allied army was blown into a mess, and some died on the spot. Blazing flames rose from the ground. No, help! Heavens, is this the sign of the destruction of the world? I surrender. Don't kill me. Sophia's powerful strength destroyed the allied armies' will to fight in an instant. Some people had already lost the will to resist and surrendered one after another, but the annihilation spheres fell mercilessly. Sophia didn't use any divine power and only used her destructive force to create all this. Her strength was incomparably terrifying. At this time, the few God Realm experts of the Noah continent's allied army had already arrived, and they pounced on Sophia like fierce tigers. Sophia smiled slightly, and her lips moved slightly. Massacre Domain. The power of the domain suddenly spread out and enveloped everyone. For a moment, everyone's movement slowed down. Hamelin's expression changed greatly. Be careful. She's using a domain. Let's go together and kill her. La Firth roared angrily. All the God Realm experts also opened their domains, contending with Sophia's massacre domain. Is it useful? With a sinister laugh, Sophia created several demon doppelgangers and separately attacked everyone. Boom! The fierce battle in the sky unfolded, and in just a few ups and downs, Sophia obtained an absolute victory with overwhelming strength. Hamelin's frost dragon was destroyed, and he also lost a part of his body. Fortunately, he was a soul body, and his damaged body was slowly recovering, but his strength was also greatly reduced. The dark dragon La Firth wasn't so lucky. When he came into contact with Sophia, he was heavily injured, and his strength was scattered. He was no longer able to maintain his dark dragon true body and fell down. Frigga, Hao Qin, and Di Luo couldn't escape the fate of defeat, and the other sacred domain experts were the same. They didn't even dare to approach Sophia's body. Just the spheres of destruction flying in the sky was enough to injure or kill them. Great. Her Highness Sophia has been known as the genius of the fiends since young. She really isn't simple. Ravens tightly clenched his fists, his eyes filled with excitement. If this continues, there's no need for the great commander to revive. Her Highness alone will be able to kill all these natives. Ron, wake up, wake up. Di Lin and Kadena gently shook Ron. They were already crying, but Ron seemed to be dead. His eyes were tightly shut, and he didn't move at all. His muscles were slightly twitching, and from time to time, they would bulge. This was the destruction caused by the destructive power wreaking havoc in his body. Although nothing could be seen on the surface, the muscle tissue inside had already been destroyed, and Ron's vitality was slowly fading away. The fierce battle in the sky continued. The experts of the Noah continent attacked Sophia with all their might, but from the current development, defeat was only a matter of time. Could it be that the Noah continent is really finished? Chapter 733. After an unknown period of time, Ron slowly opened his eyes and slowly sat up. Looking around, the sky was overcast and the ground was desolate. The surroundings were filled with white fog, making it unreal. Where am I? Ron climbed up and shook his heavy head. I was still fighting with the demon Sophia just now. Ron reached out to touch the wound, only to find that it was empty. He was shocked. I'm actually a spiritual body? Ron opened his eyes wide, revealing an expression of disbelief. Could it be that I'm already dead? Perhaps it was because he cultivated necromancy magic, but Ron was not too afraid of death. After the initial panic, he slowly calmed down. Was this the feeling of death? It was as if he had arrived in a foreign space. Could it be that death was like this? Ron thought as he slowly walked forward. He was a spiritual body, so his footsteps made no sound as he walked on the pitch-black ground. However, he could feel a substantial texture. The vast land stretched as far as the eye could see, as if there was no end to it. As Ron walked, he suddenly felt that this place was somewhat familiar. Right? Soul Ring. Could this be the space of the Soul Ring? Ron hesitated, then shook his head. No, this isn't the space of the Soul Ring. There's no dense aura of death here. Only a deathly aura. Although the space in the Soul Ring was desolate and vast, it gave people the feeling that it was full of vitality. However, the Soul Ring was filled with a deathly aura. He couldn't sense a single breath of life within 10 miles of the Soul Ring. Is anyone there? Ron stopped and called out. His voice spread through the air, but there was no response. Looks like I'm really dead. Ron laughed self-deprecatingly. Maybe the Noah continent has already been destroyed? With Sophia's strength, there's no one in the Noah continent who can stop her. Although he was very unwilling, Ron also understood that all of this was a foregone conclusion. It was useless to think about it. Everything in the Noah continent had nothing to do with him. Ron slowly raised his head and took a deep breath of the dense aura of death. Is this the world after all creatures die? There's nothing, just chaos? According to the Holy Bible of the Holy Church, people will go to two places after they die. Those who believe in God will go to heaven. Everything in heaven is beautiful, and it is filled with the most beautiful things in the world. Those who don't believe in God will go to hell. Hell is filled with the ugliest sins in the world. Who would have thought that there would be a world of chaos after death? At this time, Ron's foot kicked something hard. He picked it up and saw that it was a white skull. As a practitioner of necromancy magic, Ron had seen a lot of these things. He wasn't afraid. He smiled and picked up the skull, carefully examining it. It looked like a human skull. Two black eye sockets were staring at him, revealing a trace of horrifying whiteness. Ron played with the skull for a while, but couldn't see anything, so he casually put it down. Ron, are you really dead? Kadena hugged Ron's body, which had been cold for a long time. Tears fell like rain, and her delicate body couldn't help but tremble. Ron, don't die. You haven't seen my unborn child, Kadena said with a sobbing tone. Dee Lin sighed. Kadena, Ron is dead. I can't feel his aura. Get up. We have more important things to do. No, Ron can't be dead. He's the most powerful magus of the necromancy divine realm. He's the controller of souls. How could he die? Kadena screamed as if she had seen a ghost. She hugged Ron's body and shrank back. The battle in Quebec City was still ongoing. The powerhouses of the Noah continent launched attack after attack against Sophia. However, Sophia was too powerful. Every attack was repelled by her. Moreover, she didn't seem to be in a hurry to end the battle. She was teasing the warriors of the Noah continent. Natives of the Noah continent, come at me. Your weak strength can't contend against me. I'm a demon from hell. I'm the most powerful warrior by nature. Sophia laughed loudly. The black flames on her body rose sharply, and a powerful destructive force was released, engulfing the powerhouses of the Noah continent. Let's go. She's too powerful. Frigga's shield couldn't hold on any longer and shattered. Her entire body was exposed to the blazing temperature and burned. Let's fight. She won't let us go. Even if we die, we have to fight with all our strength. In contrast to Frigga, Firth's eyes were filled with the will to fight to the death. At this moment, as the king of the Noah continent, they had no way out. Roar! The Beaumont behemoth Hao-Cheen was hit by Sophia's iron fist. Its huge body fell rapidly and crashed into a small mountain. Its huge body sank in. One could imagine how powerful Sophia was. Immediately after, the lion-headed, human-bodied, phoenix-tailed divine realm magical beast followed in Hao-Cheen's footsteps. It was heavily injured by Sophia and vomited blood. It no longer had the strength to resist. The Scourge Church's divine necromancer Hamelin didn't have an easy time either. In order to fight against the demon Sophia, he had already exhausted all of his soul energy. Without Ron, the powerhouses of the Noah continent were all defeated. There was no one who could block Sophia's terrifying strength. She didn't even use her divine power and had already secured victory. The situation was extremely critical. At this moment, the elf race's high priestess Undine quietly looked at the sky. Not long after, she seemed to have made some kind of decision. Aurora, help me up. Yes, Grandma Undine. Aurora had been accompanying Undine. Hearing this, she didn't hesitate and helped Undine up. Looks like I'm finally going to use that thing, Undine muttered to herself. Grandma, what is that thing? Aurora asked, puzzled. Undine didn't answer. She closed her eyes and slowly opened her palm. Aurora looked at Undine's hand. In the next moment, her eyes suddenly widened. She saw Undine's hand change. Not long after, a small green thread slowly emerged from her palm. The small green thread happily jumped, emitting a powerful aura of life. This, Aurora was flabbergasted. Grandma Undine, what is this? Divine power of life. Undine calmly said, This is the legendary power bestowed by the god of life. What? Divine power of life. Is there really a god in this world? Aurora was stunned. In her opinion, gods only existed in legends. Undine didn't answer. She looked at the sky. Now I'm going to use it. As soon as she finished speaking, the small green thread in Undine's hand disappeared with a swish. Then, the green robe on her body silently moved and surged, and a powerful life force soared into the sky. Grandma Undine. Aurora was forced to take a few steps back by the powerful force. At this moment, she was stunned. Undine quietly stood on the ground. Her body emitted a green light. She was like the goddess of life descending to the mortal world. She was solemn and holy. She softly chanted, O great God of life, please forgive these ignorant sinners with your boundless magnanimity. They are cruel, ugly, bloodthirsty. Wherever they go, they bring death. But those who uphold justice are innocent. O mighty God of life, may your body become a mountain, your blood become a river, and your strength become rain. Save these countless beings that are already on their last breaths. Boom! At this moment, the wind and clouds in the sky suddenly changed. Divine power of life surged into the sky in an instant, forming a green pillar of light in the sky. High Priestess Undine quietly floated in the air like a beautiful butterfly spreading its wings. Rain of tranquility. In an instant, heavy rain poured down from the sky and landed on the ground, splashing water everywhere. At this moment, a miracle happened. The moment the heavily injured and dying soldiers of the Noah continent touched the rain falling from the sky, they were instantly jolted awake. Their eyes were wide open as they looked at everything in front of them in disbelief. Their expressions were filled with boundless joy. Their wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and what was even more surprising was that their strength was also recovering. Ah, my wounds are healed. My broken leg has grown back. What is this? Is it a miracle? Miracle. It's really a miracle. God has come to save us. The people who had woken up cheered. They shouted and jumped, heartily welcoming the arrival of the sweet dew. It's the High Priestess. The High Priestess used a powerful healing skill to save us. The sharp-eyed elf saw High Priestess Undine casting a spell in the sky and cried out in surprise. This? What is this? What a powerful power. Ravens was shocked. Suddenly, his eyes opened wide. Not good. This is divine power of life. Divine power of life? How could this thing appear on the Noah continent? Sophia roared. Impossible. Impossible. The power of the primary plane of life can't be possessed by such a low-level secondary plane. The rain of tranquility continued to fall. Under the treatment of the miraculous rain containing divine power of life, everyone's life force and strength were restored. This was the first time Undine used the heaven-defying rain of tranquility. It wasn't for anything else, but because this powerful god-tier skill required divine power to activate. However, Undine wasn't like Ron, who had a heaven-defying artifact that could transform divine power like the Soul Ring. She only had a trace, and it would disappear after using it. However, Undine used it at the last moment because she knew that there wouldn't be another chance if she didn't use it. It's the Moonwell. The elves took a deep breath. The rain of tranquility was so familiar. It was very similar to the spring water of the Moonwell in the Elven Forest. It also had the ability to heal and restore strength. However, the Moonwell couldn't be moved, nor could it be taken away from the Moonwell. Once it was taken away, the Moonwell would lose its effect. It was also because of this that the elves rarely went out to fight. In the Elven Forest, they were practically invincible. It had to be said that the appearance of the rain of tranquility in a battlefield that didn't belong to the Elven Forest had a huge effect. Not only ordinary powerhouses, but even the god-tier powerhouses like Firth and Arweldy's injuries and strength had recovered. Is this divine power of life? Even my soul strength has been restored. It's really amazing. Merlin let out a sigh of relief, because he could feel that his soul force had been replenished. No pop-up, pure text. Chapter 734. Bastard. Seeing Undine heal the powerhouses one by one and recover their strength, Sophia was finally enraged. At this moment, she looked at Undine with eyes full of murderous intent. Go to hell. Sophia's figure flashed and instantly disappeared. Her speed was extremely fast. In the next moment, she had already appeared above Undine's head. Aurora was shocked. Grandmother, be careful. Aurora's warning was too late. With a boom, a black cloud appeared in the sky. Following that, Undine's body fell down like a kite with a broken string. High Priestess. All the powerhouses of the divine realm were shocked. They couldn't care less about the injuries they had just recovered from and rushed towards Sophia without any regard for their lives. Bastard, we'll fight it out with you. Die, all of you go to hell. Amidst her maniacal laughter, the black flames on Sophia's body surged. The destructive power was like a tiger's roar, like a tornado. The entire space was filled with an intense killing intent, causing people to tremble in fear. Good gee, the skull in Ron's hand fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. At this moment, something unexpected happened. At the place where the skull shattered, a bright green color suddenly spread out. Ron's hand paused. At this moment, he was dumbfounded. He saw the green color expand rapidly with Ron as the center. Not long after, the plains were filled with beautiful green. Countless grass quietly emerged from the ground. From time to time, there would be a few cute little flowers in the grass, swaying gently in the breeze. The plains that had been lifeless just a moment ago had now become a scene full of vitality. Could it be this is the power of life? The strong contrast in front of him filled Ron's heart with shock. It also caused a flash of inspiration in his mind, as if he had comprehended something. Ron took a deep breath and slowly raised his head. His eyes were filled with determination and joy. I understand. This is the mystery between life and death. Boom! A loud sound rang out. YSYHD. A sharp pain came from Ron's mind, and this pain pulled him back to reality. He completely woke up and opened his eyes. Ron is awake. Ron is awake. Look, Ron is awake. Seeing that Ron had woken up, Kadena cried out in alarm, causing all the girls to turn around. Ron, you're awake? Are you all right? Shea came down from a nightmare beast back and walked to Ron's side. Her cold eyes revealed a trace of concern. Looking at the concerned eyes of the girls, Ron felt a burst of excitement in his heart, but he soon calmed down. He struggled to get up from Kadeena's arms. "Ron, your injuries," D-Lin cautiously reminded him. Only then did she discover that the scars on Ron's body had disappeared. She opened her mouth wide in surprise. "I'm all right." Ron glanced at D-Lin, nodded, and then looked at the sky. "I already know what happened just now, and now." With that, Ron pondered for a moment. Everything should be over. Hung! Ron's black robe rolled up, turned into a cloud of black mist, and instantly disappeared in the air. The girls widened their eyes and looked at each other, not knowing what to do. "Did you notice that Ron seems to be a little different?" Kadeena took the lead and said. Shea shook her head. "Could it be that he has become stronger? But I didn't feel it." Ron had indeed changed, and the change was great. His change was not the increase in his strength, but the increase in his realm after comprehending the profound meaning of life and death. Undine's face was as pale as a sheet of gold paper. Although she used the divine power of life to heal most of the powerhouses of the Noah continent, she was seriously injured by Sophia's attack. At this moment, she no longer had the ability to use the healing technique. Boom! Thunderbolts and thunderbolts came down from the sky. As if the lightning had a mind of its own, it all blasted on Sophia's body. Purple lightning wrapped around Sophia's body, and the places where the purple lightning passed by spasmed. Damn it! Sophia's arms shook, and the power of destruction burst out, swallowing all the purple lightning. She gritted her teeth, and the crazy power of destruction blasted out. The target was the fairy dragon. Frigga, who had transformed into the fairy dragon true body, had an extremely shocked expression on her face. Needless to say, she was the one who released the thunderbolts just now. She did not expect that not only was it easily broken by the other party, but it was also counterattacked in the blink of an eye. Sophia had fought with Ron and the other powerhouses for half the night, and it was inevitable that her body was lightly injured. Frigga, who had just recovered from her injuries and all her strength, thought that she could fight the other party, but unfortunately, she miscalculated. The demon's power did not decrease at all. On the contrary, her fighting spirit was stimulated by her injuries, and she became even more ferocious. The burning black flames quickly converged into a long sword in the shape of a half-moon. The sharp edge cut through the sky, producing an ear-piercing whistling sound, as if it could cut through everything in the world. "It's over." Frigga knew that she was no match for the other party. She closed her eyes in despair. At this moment, a miracle happened. With a boom, the blade formed by the black flames was blown to pieces. Then, countless ghost-like skulls surged out from the explosion, frantically entangling Sophia. Unknowingly, a thin figure in a black robe appeared in the sky, a pair of cold black eyes staring at her coldly. That is, the fairy dragon opened her mouth wide, stunned. Who else could it be but Ron? He was resurrected too, and he saved her. Death entanglement. Thousands of skulls turned into black spiritual snakes, surrounding the huge Sophia in an instant. Not long after, Sophia's angry roar came from the sky above the battlefield. "Damn it! What the hell is this? It actually attacked my soul." Sophia desperately covered her head, a painful expression on her face. The black flames on her body soared, and the skulls formed by the souls howled in despair, turning into ashes one after another. After expelling the invading soul with great difficulty, Sophia slowly opened her eyes. At this moment, she saw a familiar figure and frowned. "It's you? You're not dead yet?" "I almost died just now. Fortunately, a voice called me back when I was dying." Ron smiled and took a deep breath. "After dying once, I know how wonderful life is." "Is that so?" Sophia sneered. "Unfortunately, you're going to die again soon. Do you think, even if you're resurrected, you'll be my opponent?" Sophia swung the crescent blade in her hand. A small Noah-continent world surface actually produced a mid-level god realm genius who hasn't even reached 30 years of age. Too bad. You're going to die in my hands. Ron's expression was still calm, so calm that it was a little cold. Then let's give it a try. Perhaps for me, death. It's not the most terrifying thing. Ron is resurrected again. I hope he can bring us something different. Long live the young lord. Young lord is invincible. Noah Mainland's experts were surprised. Ron's reappearance gave them a glimmer of hope. The Scourge Church's disciples excitedly spread the news. Ravens was a little surprised. Ron, this guy is also resurrected? Damn it. Why didn't I rush up and finish him off just now? He then lowered his head, a trace of joy on his face. I don't need to worry too much. So what if he's resurrected? He's no match for Her Highness. Rumble. A bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket twisted and fell from the sky, striking a large tree and creating a deafening boom. Not long after, the forest was set ablaze. Sophia and Ron, two mid-level god realm masters, were facing each other in the sky. Both of them were exuding a powerful aura, colliding and entangling with each other. Wherever they passed, sparks flew in all directions. Unknowingly, the sky darkened, and dark clouds covered the sky. The confrontation of these two people's strength actually attracted the heaven's might. Rumble. At this time, another throbbing sound came from not far away. But this time, it wasn't lightning that fell from the sky, but from the depths of the blood pool in the center of Quebec City. Ron's expression changed slightly. Once again, he deeply felt that enormous and oppressive deterrence, as well as that soaring, killing intent. Needless to say, this chilling power came from him, the terrifying sovereign king of hell. Ron, do you feel that power? That's right, my dear father, the great sovereign king of hell, Ron. Perhaps in the next moment, perhaps in the next second, he will be resurrected. Ron, you won't have another chance. Everything on Noah mainland will be destroyed by him. Sophia laughed, revealing two deep canine teeth in her wide, open mouth. I won't let this happen. In the void, Ron took a step forward and said coldly. At this time, a small black thread appeared in his palm, gently throbbing. It was the last trace of death divine energy. At this moment, Ron was finally going to use it. Death divine energy? Ha, it's useless. Do you have to do it again before you give up? In the midst of her wild laughter, a trace of black destruction divine energy appeared in Sophia's hand, constantly twisting like an earthworm. At this time, Sophia's right hand suddenly grasped, and the destruction divine energy disappeared at once. Then, the black flames on Sophia's body suddenly rose sharply. Sophia shouted. At this moment, the demonic wings on her back spread out, and her eyes turned crimson, looking abnormally ferocious. Doomblade. Without waiting for Ron to react, Sophia took the lead. She raised her hands high, and as the power rolled, a huge Doomblade fell from the sky and attacked Ron like a meteor. The powerful fire of destruction burned fiercely, illuminating half the sky. Destruction divine energy? The appearance of divine energy shocked everyone. For a moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats, and they were worried for Ron. In the face of Sophia's overwhelming destructive power, Ron was not in a hurry. His face was always calm, so calm that it was a little scary, as if nothing was in his eyes. A smile gently appeared on the corner of Ron's mouth. At this moment, he muttered to himself, "What's death? What's so scary about death? I've already comprehended the mysteries of life and death." Quick no pop-up window, pure text. Chapter 735. Death Space. As soon as Ron's voice fell, his eyes flashed with killing intent. In the blink of an eye, a vast aura of death came from the horizon and quickly enveloped the entire space. What is this? Sophia was shocked. At this moment, the scenery in front of her changed appearance in an instant, as if she was in another space. Desolate, barren, and chaotic. She couldn't see in front of her, nor could she see behind her. Sophia didn't know where she was. The blade of destruction, that was blasted out with divine power of destruction also disappeared without a trace in an instant. What's going on? Where is this? Where is he? Sophia roared as she looked around in confusion. She anxiously looked around, but couldn't find any exit. Even Ron's trace had disappeared. Death space was a skill that Ron had comprehended on his deathbed. After he comprehended the profound meaning of life and death, he had a deeper understanding of the law of death. Ron's strength didn't increase. What he increased was his realm. Time seemed to have stopped. In this chaotic space, it was as if there was no concept of time and space. This was the true death space, a desolate, barren, and deathly silent world. However, nothing unusual could be seen from the outside. In the sky, a black fog was quietly floating. The black fog was constantly churning and rolling, and no one could see what was happening inside. The battle between the two seemed to have stopped. There was no longer a trace of the power of destruction and death overflowing in the sky. What's going on? The experts of the Noah continent looked at each other and whispered to each other. Looking at the huge black fog in the sky, no one said anything. It was as if the two had disappeared in an instant. What's going on? Both of them disappeared. Frigga, who had transformed into a fairy dragon, landed on the head of the dark dragon R.A. Firth and looked at the black fog in the sky in disbelief. She had already used her spiritual sense to check the black fog, but found that it was empty. There was nothing inside except the black fog. Lord Patriarch, did you find anything? Frigga asked. No. The dark dragon flying in the sky shook his huge head. I can't find anything. I don't know if Ron won or lost. How about I go there and take a look? Frigga looked at the black fog with an eager expression. Don't. R.A. Firth was shocked. I don't know what the hell is in the black fog, but my intuition tells me that it's very dangerous. Frigga gave up after hearing Raphael's words. She didn't know why, but her heart was pounding. Why? Why am I suddenly so concerned about him? What's wrong with me? Fu Lijia took a deep breath and suppressed her pounding heart with great difficulty. Unknowingly, a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. The fierce battle suddenly stopped. Even Ravens felt strange. He couldn't help but comfort himself. No, Her Royal Highness will be fine. How can that native necromancer be a match for Her Royal Highness? Bastard, what the hell is this place? Where is he? Come out. Sophia flapped the wings on her back and flew at high speed in the chaos. She cursed fiercely as she flew, but no matter how fast she was, she could not escape this chaotic space even when she used the demon's ultimate skill, teleportation. At this moment, a trace of panic finally appeared in her eyes. You don't have to struggle. It's useless. At this time, a voice that Sophia hated the most sounded as if it had appeared from the sky. Not long after, a projection appeared in front of Sophia. It was Ron's face, but that face was very huge in Sophia's eyes. Her huge body, which was more than 10 meters tall, could not even reach Ron's mouth. You finally showed up. Looking at this familiar face, Sophia gnashed her teeth in anger. Where did you take me? What is this place? Ron calmly looked at Sophia as if he was looking at a dead person. He slowly said, This is the death space I created with my divine power. Here, you are already dead. I'm already dead? Impossible. How can you kill me? As soon as Ron's voice fell, Sophia roared. At this time, she raised her right hand, and a trace of destruction divine power appeared in her palm. Then, it turned into a powerful skill full of ruthlessness and killing aura, and fiercely blasted towards Ron. Boom! The chaotic space trembled, and the powerful destruction power instantly dispersed the projection of Ron's face. Just when Sophia thought she could take a breath, she saw Ron's face condense again and appear in front of her again. How can this be? You are obviously not my match. Why? Why do you have such a powerful power? Sophia's ferocious eyes widened, and her face showed an expression of disbelief. She clearly remembered that the blow was made with the divine power of destruction, but obviously had no effect at all. I said, You're already dead. Everything you do is in vain. Ron said calmly. Impossible. Impossible. Ron, you can't do this. This is a god. This is a power that only a god can have. Sophia screamed crazily. At this moment, she really felt fear. Sophia wanted to escape, but she soon found that she could not escape from this chaotic death space. At this time, she was caught by Ron. Tell me, what do I have to do to stop Sauron's resurrection? In the chaotic death space, Ron reached out and pinched Sophia's body and asked calmly. Sophia wanted to struggle, but when her eyes met with Ron's, she felt as if she was captured, and her mind was blank. The magic circle of the dark ritual is in the center of Quebec City. The eye of the circle is controlled by the black magician, Mr. Longinu. As long as you kill him and then destroy the magic circle, you can stop my father's resurrection. Her mind was controlled by Ron, and there was a trace of struggle in Sophia's expression, but she finally said it. Okay, Ron nodded. He knew that under his control, Sophia would not lie at all. People would lie, but souls would not lie. Ron thought for a moment, and then he asked another question. If King Sauron is resurrected, what will you do? Contrary to the situation just now, Sophia quickly said, kill all the creatures in the Noah continent and turn it into a dead plain without any creatures. As expected, after knowing the true purpose of Sophia and the burning core, a trace of anger finally appeared on Ron's face. At this time, he relaxed his control over Sophia's mind, and she instantly woke up. After knowing that everything had been said, Sophia understood that it was too late. At this moment, her face was full of fear. No, don't kill me. Sophia hurriedly defended herself. Could it be that killing is not the instinct of all living creatures? Go to hell. Ron knew that it was useless to say more. He smiled coldly, and the overwhelming aura of death suddenly pressed down. Like a fragile piece of wood, Sophia's huge body, which was more than 10 meters tall, was torn apart in an instant by Ron's powerful force. Under the death space, everything seemed so strange. A powerful mid-level god realm expert, an existence that Ron could not surpass, actually died so easily. Her huge demonic corpse sank into the chaos. Sophia's face was full of extreme resentment. Until her death, she did not dare to believe the fact in front of her eyes. Boom! Ron only saw a blur in front of his eyes. The chaotic, desolate death space disappeared in an instant, and all the scenery reappeared. Ron's thoughts returned to reality. Quebec City was shrouded in fear. The black fog in the sky had disappeared, and Ron's thin figure was still standing in the sky. But Sophia was gone. It's over like this. Ron sighed softly, an expression of endless regret on his face. That death space was merely the state of mind he had reached when he comprehended the mysteries of life and death. When that state of mind disappeared, that state of mind also disappeared. In other words, even if Ron were to use his death god force to create another death space, he would not be able to do it. It was like a strange feeling. Although it was familiar, as if he could reach out and grab it, in reality, it was extremely far away. Even so, Ron's harvest this time was huge. At the very least, he felt that he was one step closer to comprehending the law of death. AI, what a pity. If I could really comprehend the death space. Even if Sauron came back to life, I might still be able to put up a fight. Ron shook his head and sighed. That's Ron. Young Lord, where's that demon? Is he dead? Long live. Young Lord killed the demon. When the black fog in the sky dispersed, only Ron was left. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and some who reacted quickly began to cheer. Firth and Frigga looked at each other and sighed in relief at the same time. No, impossible. This is impossible. Raven's body trembled violently, and he could not help but take a step back. His eyes were full of disbelief. Sophia's aura had completely disappeared. Although he did not know how that native necromancer did it, all of this really happened. Impossible. How could that guy be a match for Her Highness? He was defeated a quarter of an hour ago. How could his strength have increased so much in just a few minutes? Impossible. Chapter 736. Hooray! Hooray, Ron! Young master is mighty. The battlefield was in an uproar. At this moment, all the powerhouses in the realm of the gods felt relieved and relaxed. Undine stood up with the help of Aurora and looked at the cheering crowd with a smile. The haze in the sky was gone, and even the sun seemed to become bright and beautiful. Boom! 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 Just as everyone was celebrating Sophia's death, the terrifying power of the central blood pool in the depths of Quebec City came again. The powerful aura of destruction shook heaven and earth, as if warning everyone. Under the pressure of the murderous destructive power, everyone's expression changed greatly. Only then did the people who were immersed in joy remember that the matter was not completely over yet. Of course, Ron did not forget. Only he knew how terrifying the real strength of the headless corpse that he had temporarily controlled was. When refining this corpse, he felt that he had touched the depths of its soul, a destructive power that contained a powerful killing intent and was as vast as the abyss. No, I have to stop him right now. Feeling the increasing pressure on his body, Ron's desire to stop everything became stronger. His figure moved, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in the sky above Quebec City. Pong! Flames with the power of destruction suddenly rose into the sky and lit up the whole sky. The whole of Quebec City was filled with a hellish aura of destruction. In the middle of the magic array of the dark ritual, Ron saw a thin figure in a dark gray robe. He held a staff high and kept chanting loudly. Because he'd been casting spells without sleep for a long time, his body was almost exhausted. He only relied on strength potions and magic potions to maintain the magic array's operation. But at this moment, his eyes were full of blazing madness. It seems that he is the Longinus that Sophia mentioned. Ron pondered for a moment and suddenly walked quickly toward the black magician. At this moment, his eyes were full of murderous intent. Suddenly, a trace of vigilance flashed in Ron's mind. He hurriedly took a step back and casually threw out Frost Nova. Along with a scream, it was Raven's. He was frozen in a broken wall, shivering from the cold. I can't let you get close to Lord Sauron, Ron snorted coldly. Unfortunately, you don't have the ability to stop me. After saying that, he didn't waste any more words with him. He casually used Soul Devour to devour his soul. As if he knew Ron's plan, Sauron, who was in the middle of the blood pool, roared. He constantly released powerful pressure, intending to prevent Ron from approaching Longinus. By this time, Ron had already arrived in front of Longinus. Who are you? What are you doing here? Longinus seemed to have just woken up. Looking at Ron in front of him, he couldn't help but be stunned. During the casting process, Sophia had been strictly disturbing him, so Longinus didn't know what was happening outside. I'm the one who came to kill you, Ron said in a deep voice with a cold face. Before Longinus could react, he had already made his move. Roar! Sauron was furious. He suddenly stretched out a big hand and grabbed Ron. With a powerful and overwhelming destructive power, a powerful flame force field was formed in the surrounding space. Ron, who was in the middle of the flame force field, almost suffocated. Gotcha! Ron was unmoved. He completely ignored Sauron's huge hand. The sharp spear of death resolutely pierced through Longinus's head, extracting his soul from his skull and sucking it into the soul ring. Longinus's face was filled with endless resentment and unwillingness. He softly fell. Until now, he still didn't understand how he died. Longinus never thought that the powerful Burning Legion would be destroyed one day. Roar! At the same time, Sauron also tightly held his head with a painful expression on his face. He roared and fell down. The blood pool splashed with a huge splash, making a terrifying sound that shook the sky. With Sauron's fall, the destructive power that spread throughout Quebec City finally disappeared without a trace. After killing Longinus, the operation of the magic formation also stopped. The sky was clear again, and the warm sunlight shone down. It was very comfortable. Success! Everyone cheered. The moment Quebec City fell, it marked the end of the Burning Legion's goal in the Noah continent. There were still many hell creatures that were still stubbornly resisting. But under the attack of the powerhouses of the divine realm led by Ron, they were all killed. They knew that they would die without a doubt, so they desperately resisted until they were all wiped out. When the last hell creature fell, Quebec City had become a sea of joy. Countless race flags fluttered on the city walls, and the warriors threw their helmets into the air. In the alliance army of the Noah continent, whether it was humans, orcs, elves, or magical beasts, they all hugged each other tightly. Many people shed tears of excitement. We finally won. The elven high priestess Undine had tears in her eyes. She was supported by Aurora, and her face was full of excitement. The two powerhouses of the dragons, Firth and Frigga, returned to their human forms. They looked at each other and sighed in relief. Frigga turned her head and happened to see Ron standing not far away. After staring for a long time, she could not help but sigh softly with a complicated expression. Did we really win? Ron stood on the city wall, his pitch-black eyes quietly staring at the blood pool below the city wall, his eyes filled with worry. At this time, Ron thought of the dream that seemed to foretell something, until the burning legion set foot on the Noah continent and slaughtered everywhere. Scene after scene appeared in his mind like a movie. From the beginning to the end, everything was like a dream, illusory, yet real. Did we really win? Ron muttered to himself again. The aura of the Lord of Hell, Sauron, had completely disappeared. There was no trace of the aura of destruction in the entire Noah continent. But for some reason, Ron always felt a little uneasy, as if some danger was about to come. This premonition became more and more intense as time passed. Ron, D-Lin, Kadena, Aurora, Vivian, and the others ran up breathlessly. Their faces were filled with the joy of surviving a disaster. D-Lin, Ron, we succeeded. We stopped the Burning Legion's conspiracy. That horrible king of hell will never be resurrected again. Kadena shouted excitedly. Ron, you are our pride. As she spoke, she did not care that everyone was looking at her. She hugged Ron and kissed him on the cheek. Yo! Kadena even kissed him. The girls screamed exaggeratedly, and the air exuded a joyful and peaceful atmosphere. Kadena was teased by D-Lin and Aurora, and her face could not help but blush. Compared with the relaxed and humorous atmosphere of the girls, Ron's expression at the moment was extremely dignified. He did not even realize that Kadena had kissed him. Did we really win? At this time, the attentive Aurora noticed that something was wrong with Ron and hurriedly asked, Ron, what's wrong with you? Ron did not answer. He lowered his head and stared at the blood pool in the center of the city. The blood pool formed by the essence and souls of countless creatures in the Noah continent was now bubbling. The feeling of uneasiness was getting more and more intense. At this time, the girls also noticed that something was wrong with Ron. They quieted down and looked at Ron, then at the blood pool, but did not find anything wrong. They looked at each other and felt very strange. D-Lin's heart skipped a beat, and she asked, Ron, did you find something? Ron did not answer. His eyes were still fixed on the blood pool in the center of Quebec City, as if a terrifying monster was hiding at the bottom of the blood pool. After a while, Ron's expression gradually changed. His expression changed from puzzlement to anger to surprise and finally to fear. At the same time, his body began to tremble involuntarily. At this time, Ron's pupils suddenly widened and he blurted out a sentence. Chapter 737. Crash! A sound was heard. In the middle of the blood pool in the middle of Quebec City, a giant hand suddenly stretched out, and a terrifying aura of destruction suddenly appeared, covering the entire space. Then a head stretched out from the middle of the blood pool and looked at Ron, Kadena, D-Lin, and others. It was a super huge head. The distance from his forehead to his lips was more than the height of a person. There were countless spikes on the head, which were demon horns. There were also 2 curved horns on the head, exuding a cold metallic luster. The giant's red eyes stared coldly at the crowd, revealing an extremely ferocious, bloodthirsty, tyrannical, and murderous aura of destruction, as if they were in an ice cellar. Delin and Kadena both took a step back, their eyes showing extreme fear. They were all frightened. Standing in front of this giant, Ron's cold sweat flowed down his cheeks. At this moment, he already knew that the most terrifying legendary king of hell, Soren, had finally resurrected. The terrifying king of hell appeared, and the powerful aura of destruction made people tremble. My God, what the hell is this? What a powerful aura of destruction. Demons are not worth mentioning compared to him. He's too powerful. Why do I feel death? All the strong people in the Noah continent were stunned. They stared blankly at the huge head that rose into the sky and did not know what to do. What happened? Didn't the magic circle of the dark ritual stop working? Didn't the aura of the king of hell disappear? Why? Why did he resurrect? This question, not only did everyone not understand, even Ron, who knew all this, could not understand. He clearly killed Long Inu and destroyed the magic circle. Why did Soren resurrect? However, there was no time to think about it at this moment. The giant suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a blazing breath. His target was Ron and others. Be careful. Ron was shocked. He pulled Delin with one hand and Kadena with the other and disappeared with a bang. With a boom, the place where Ron and others were standing just now turned into ruins. That was close. Ron breathed a sigh of relief. If he was a step slower, it would be over. Even if he was fine, Delin and Kadena would not be able to withstand a casual blow from Soren. Thinking of this, Ron felt a lingering fear. Kadena was pregnant with his child. Ron, what should we do now? Kadena hugged Ron tightly, her pretty face pale with fright. Ron took a deep breath. Looking at Soren's terrifying, huge body, he also felt that it was very troublesome. He braced himself and said in a deep voice, "You guys find a place to hide first. I'll deal with this guy." Delin understood and nodded gently. Kadena still wanted to say something, but Delin pulled her away. Roar! Soren, the king of hell, appeared from the central blood pool and roared. Then the earth began to shake. Boom! With the eruption of Soren's power, the stones of the Quebec City wall peeled off and fell into the blood pool, splashing a huge red water. At this time, the blood pool built by countless craftsmen began to collapse. Flames spread unknowingly and covered the entire Quebec City. The blazing flames burned the sky. At this moment, Quebec City was like hell. Not long after, a super demon that was dozens of stories tall with a pair of wings on his back stepped out. His entire body was black, and his muscles were filled with explosive power. He looked like he had just woken up. He was panting heavily, and his terrifying aura intimidated everyone. This guy is the king of hell that the Burning Legion wants to resurrect, Soren. The dark colossal dragon Firth trembled. At this moment, in the face of such a powerful force, a sense of powerlessness suddenly surged in his heart. If it were not for the dignity of dragons, he would have knelt down with a plop. Even the powerhouses of the divine realm were like this, let alone the ordinary powerhouses of various races. They were already scared stiff, and some even wet their pants on the spot. Cold-blooded, ferocious, terrifying, and powerful. This was the portrayal of the life of Soren, the commander of the Burning Legion. At this moment, he was resurrected from the dead, and the horror and shock he brought was no less than 100,000 years ago. The Noah continent became the first sacrifice after his resurrection. Was there really no other way? At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on Ron. At this moment, Ron had become the last hope of the Noah continent. Although Ron comforted Kadena and the others like this, in fact, he was not confident in his heart. King Soren's strength was too terrifying. No matter what, I have to give it a try. Ron took a deep breath, and there was a trace of killing intent in his eyes. He gently stretched out his hand, and a small black silk thread jumped in his palm. That was a trace of the divine power of death, which was transformed from Sophia's soul. It was also the only trace of divine power that Ron had at present. At this moment, Ron could not care so much. He decided to use it. Spear of Death. With the disappearance of the divine power of death, Ron's soul power was running wildly. Patriarch, do you think Ron will win? Frigga stared at Ron in the sky, and there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I don't know. Their strength is too strong. I hope Ron can win. Firth's face was gloomy. If he loses, our Noah continent will be finished. Ron's mother, the dark wyvern Bustling, had changed back to her human form. At this moment, she stood quietly and looked at Ron in the sky motionlessly. Her eyes showed infinite love. Ron, my beloved son, for the Noah continent, you must win. Go, son, you will always be my pride. And Mother is honored because of you. Bestley's hands were clasped together in front of her chest and prayed silently in her heart. At this time, Soren, the king of hell, standing in the middle of Quebec City, also felt a trace of danger. He slowly raised his head and stared at Ron with cold and cruel blood-red eyes. Go, Ron shouted. He raised the spear of death high and threw it out with all his might. The powerful divine power of death penetrated the void, full of cold and desolate breath, and the grim smile of the god of death seemed to appear in the sky. Don't underestimate this small spear of death. The law of death contained in it was shuddering. The divine power of death could penetrate through the skin, destroy Soren's body, meridians, flesh, and finally attack the soul. Boom! Soren, who had just awakened and was still in a state of chaos, could not dodge in time. He was hit by the spear of death and was pierced between his eyebrows. He wailed in pain. The severe pain attacked Soren's soul like a neurotoxin, making him want to die. A familiar feeling emerged in his heart again. This was hatred, the monstrous hatred. The soul that had been imprisoned for 100,000 years was once again awakened by this familiar force. What? Ron was shocked, and there was an incredible look in his eyes. He did not expect that the spear of death, which was cast with the powerful divine power of death, did not cause much damage to Soren. See, Soren roared, and the veins on his face bulged violently. Then, the powerful divine power of destruction burst out, and the black flames on his body burned the sky. At this moment, he was furious. Soren launched a counterattack. He opened his mouth and spat out a black flame at Ron in the sky. The black flame turned into a long dragon, and what was wrapped in it was the ball of destruction, full of killing and destruction. Death Guard. The ball of destruction came too fast, and Ron had no time to dodge. He waved the bone staff in his hand, and a white skeleton was formed in an instant, like a cage, protecting him. It's over. When the ball of destruction appeared, Ron already knew that he had lost. This ball of destruction, condensed by the divine power of destruction, was many times more powerful than the demons like Sophia. Boom! The ball of destruction blasted Ron. At this time, Ron only felt a blazing aura, like the flames of the Earth's core, colliding head-on, almost suffocating him. Crash! In just a moment, his death guard burst into pieces. Ron spat out a mouthful of blood, and with the black flames on his body, he fell like a kite with a broken string. Ron, young master. There was a burst of exclamations on the ground. No one thought that Ron would be defeated, and defeated so thoroughly. Ron's attack with the divine power of death did not have any effect at all. Ron was defeated? Frigga opened her eyes wide in astonishment, and an expression of disbelief was on her face. To her, Ron's strength was enough to make her look up to him, but such a powerhouse of the divine realm was defeated without any suspense. The gap between them is really too big. Lawfirth looked at the sky and murmured. At this time, a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Frigga noticed that Lawfirth's hand was trembling slightly. The Noah continent is finished. Lawfirth's face was ashen. Facing the Lord of Hell Sauron, who was much stronger than Ron, he could not raise a trace of fighting spirit in his heart. The Noah continent is finished. Seeing this, everyone's heart rose this thought. At this moment, their eyes were full of fear. At this time, Sauron, who had transformed into a giant, began to attack. He took a step forward, raised his foot high, and stomped down fiercely. Boom! Chapter 738. Lee, M.O.C. As if he was born to fight against the undead, Soren began to attack the army of the Scourge Church. Every time his giant foot stepped down, more than a dozen Scourge Church soldiers would be burned to ashes. Help! Run away! The fighting spirit of the Scourge Church soldiers finally collapsed. They wailed and ran around like headless flies, causing the whole formation to be in chaos. They were then trampled to death by Soren. Great Elder, please think of a way. At this moment, Vivian was worried to death. She kept shaking Homelin's arm, and her tone was full of pleading. Every student of the Scourge Church was a treasure that took countless efforts to cultivate. There's no other way. Homelin seemed to have aged a few decades, and his turbid eyes were full of despair. All we can do is fight for our lives. Homelin took a deep breath and murmured. At this moment, his eyes were full of sorrow. Fight! Homelin seemed to have made up his mind. He summoned the Frost Dragon and launched a deadly attack on Soren. Firtha saw this and quickly reacted. He roared and began to transform. Frigga hesitated for a moment and also turned into a fairy dragon and rushed over. Beaumont's giant beast strength increased, and the Lion-Man Fong and Di Luo also made their moves. They turned into powerful beasts and attacked Soren recklessly. Roar! A loud sound was heard. Soren's peerless ferocity broke out again. Then the overwhelming flames came and turned the whole Quebec City into a sea of flames in an instant. Bang! 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 La Firtha, Li Jia, and Di Luo were blown away. They vomited blood and changed back to their original forms. Homelin's Frost Dragon was shattered. The powerful flame of destruction was burning his soul, causing him to scream. Only Frigga was the luckiest. She ran a little slower, so she was only slightly injured. The King of Hell, Sauron, was too powerful. Although this result was within everyone's expectations, it still shocked everyone present. In an instant, all of the Noah continent's divine realm powerhouses had been defeated. Just Sauron alone was enough to destroy the entire continent. It's useless. That fellow's strength isn't something an ordinary domain of the gods can compare to, Ron muttered to himself as he struggled to get up. At this moment, he felt something sweet in his throat and spat out another mouthful of blood. Ron, are you okay? Kadena asked softly as she helped Ron up. I'm fine. Looking at Kadena's concerned gaze, Ron's heart warmed. He then sighed. Unfortunately, the Noah continent is finished. If it's over, then so be it. Kadena gently leaned her head on Ron's shoulder, her beautiful blue hair casually hanging down. As long as I can be with you, even if I die, I don't care. She gently stroked her abdomen and murmured, It's a pity that my child still hasn't seen this world. Perhaps this is an irresistible fate. Ron sighed and hugged Kadena's slightly bloated body. Looking at Sauron's huge figure, a sense of despair and powerlessness surged through his body. Boom, boom, boom. Under the King of Hell Sauron's devastation, the ancient buildings in Quebec City collapsed one after another. This once 1,000-year-old ancient city quickly turned into ruins. All the powerhouses of the Noah continent, including the God Realm powerhouses who had survived, found a place to hide. They stared at the tall figure with fearful eyes, not daring to move. Ga. When there was not a single building left standing in the whole of Quebec City, the furious Sauron finally stopped. He breathed heavily, and his blood-red eyes quietly looked at this strange world. The strong smell of blood with a strong, murderous aura permeated the city that had become a ruin. What does he want to do? Being swept by Sauron's eyes, everyone couldn't help but shudder. They didn't know who would become the next victim of the angry King of Hell. At this time, King Sauron, who was panting heavily, finally calmed down. He looked at those people with disdain. That's right, it was disdain. In the big Noah continent, no one could enter his eyes. Even the most powerful divine, undead Magus Ron was like an ant in his eyes. At this moment, Ron felt that his heart was stabbed fiercely. Although he already knew the strength of the other party, this kind of contemptuous gaze was extremely uncomfortable. Damn it! Ron gritted his teeth fiercely. His fists were clenched so tightly that his hands turned white. He lowered his head and tried not to let Sauron see the hatred in his heart at this time. Oh, Sauron smiled coldly, and then let out a long howl. Then the earth shook, and even the sky seemed to be collapsing. Pong bang! At this time, King Sauron's howl stopped and opened the huge wings on his back. The huge demonic wings covered the sky and blew a gust of wind. Then, with a flap of the wings, Sauron's huge body slowly rose and flew into the air. Soon, there was only a small black dot left. As soon as Sauron left, the murderous aura that covered the sky suddenly disappeared without a trace. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed. An ray of sunlight passed through the clouds and sprinkled on the ravaged earth. Oh! All the powerhouses of the Noah continent breathed a sigh of relief after getting their lives back for no reason. Thinking of the terrifying scene just now, many of them still had lingering fears, especially when they were stared at by Sauron's blood-red eyes. It was as if their hearts had stopped beating. But at this time, everyone felt strange. Where on earth did the terrible king of hell go? And why did he let everyone go? Just as everyone was puzzled, Cardina, who was beside Ron, cried out in alarm. Cadina opened her mouth wide, with a look of panic in her eyes, and said, "Ron, look, that's the direction of the Elven Forest." Elven Forest? After hearing Cadina's words, Ron gave a fierce shudder. He patted his head. Wasn't the direction Sauron flew to the Elven Forest? But why did he go to the Elven Forest? The Elven army had already poured out, and there were not many people in the Elven Forest now. This was also good. Even if Sauron rushed over now, it would not cause too many casualties. Ron comforted himself like this, and his heart slowly calmed down. At this time, he saw the High Priest of the Elves, Undine, coming over with a serious look. "High Priest, I think don't worry too much. As long as the elves are fine, it's fine." At this time, Ron's tense face squeezed out a smile, and he gently bowed. "Sorry, High Priest, I don't have the ability to stop all this." "No, Ron, I'm not blaming you. I know, you've done your best." Undine took a deep breath, smiled bitterly, and then returned to a serious look. She glanced at Ron and said, "But I want to go back to the Elven Forest to take a look." "What? You want to go back to the Elven Forest?" When Ron heard this, he became nervous and said hurriedly, "High Priest, don't you know that Sauron is rushing to the Elven Forest? If you rush over now, it'll be very dangerous." "I know." Undine sighed and slowly raised her head. Her green eyes quietly looked at the distant sky. "But the Elven Forest. I'm worried, but your injury," Ron said hesitantly. "My injury is not serious." "Ron, I'll go first." "Be careful." Undine took a deep breath and hurriedly said these words. Her green figure shook, and in the blink of an eye, she had disappeared into the sky. Aurora took a deep breath and looked at Ron. Her lips moved, but she did not say anything. She also followed Undine and flew into the sky. "Ron," Cardina turned around with a worried expression on her face. "I know, I'll follow." Ron nodded and said in a deep voice. Then, his body turned into smoke and disappeared. After Ron left, Hamelin did not care about his seriously injured body and followed. He was afraid that something would happen to Ron. Vivian, Kay, and the other Sacred Domain powerhouses who worked for the Scourge Church also flew into the sky without hesitation. "Lord Patriarch, what should we do?" Frigga turned and asked. Firth did not say anything. He stomped his legs, and a huge dark dragon appeared in the sky, roaring as it flew into the distance. Frigga hesitated for a moment, but also flew into the sky. The wind in the sky was slightly cold. Ron did not fly for long before he saw Undine in front of him. She had already caught up. Sauron, on the other hand, was flying unhurriedly below at a speed that was neither fast nor slow. "Ron, you're here." Seeing Ron appear, Undine smiled. I knew you would come. At this time, a dragon's roar came from behind. It was the dark dragon Firth and Frigga. Behind them were Hao Qin and Di Luo. Now, all the powerhouses of the divine domain in the Noah continent had gathered. Thank you, everyone. Looking at all this, Undine's eyes were a little moist. This was originally a matter of the elves. She did not expect that all the powerhouses of the Noah continent would be involved. It's nothing. Firth's low voice came. This is no longer a matter of the elves. The Lord of Hell, Sauron, was still flying in front. He didn't seem to mind the God's domain experts following behind him. To him, those God's domain experts were like ants. Who would care about a few ants following behind him? Soon, they arrived at the elven forest. Sauron's body, which was bigger than the dark dragon, stopped at this time. After a while, he turned to the east. Where's this guy going? What is his purpose in coming to the elven forest? Ron was puzzled and could not help but ask. At this time, Undine's face was pale. She trembled and pointed to the front. That's the direction of Noah Dashiel. What? Noah Dashiel? Chapter 739. That's right, it's Nordrassil. Undine's voice deepened. He has another name, the World Tree. The World Tree. Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard that. However, no one noticed that Undine had said he and nodded. Undine said, the World Tree is the origin of all life on the Noah continent. There's an infinite amount of divine power of life there, and my divine power of life was bestowed upon me by Nordrassil when I was promoted to a god-level powerhouse. Undine took a deep breath, and her tone became extremely serious. If the World Tree, Nordrassil, is finished, then the entire Noah continent will also. Her face darkened as she shook her head and did not continue. If Nordrassil is finished, then what will happen to the Noah continent? Ron's heart tightened as he asked in a low voice. He was concerned about the survival of the Noah continent. If Nordrassil is finished, then all the mountains and rivers on the Noah continent will dry up, and the fish in the rivers and the creatures on the mountains will die in large numbers. Gray haze will cover the land, and life will not grow. What follows is the waiting of death. All living things will lose their vitality and become lifeless. Over the long years, they will gradually die. The moment all living things die, the entire Noah continent will become barren and dead silent. It will become a world with nothing. Am I right, Grandma? Aurora had come to the side of the crowd and interrupted. Her voice was pleasant to the ears, and she spoke tirelessly. Some of the god-level powerhouses were entranced by her words. Undine nodded, tacitly agreeing with Aurora's words. Dead silent world? Hearing this, Ron sucked in a breath of cold air. He remembered that he had not fully comprehended the death space. Could it be that this was the world after losing the source of life? This World Tree, Nordrassil, was the origin of life on the Noah continent. All the powerhouses were silent, shocked by the words of Undine and Aurora. Frigga blinked and could not help but take a few more glances at the night elf woman, who was already Ron's wife. She lowered her head, not knowing what she was thinking. Aurora turned around and looked at Ron with her green eyes. She gently leaned over and held one of Ron's hands. Ron, I suspect the King of Hell, Sauron's true goal, is the huge life force contained in the World Tree, Nordrassil. Ron, I beg you, for the sake of the elves, for the sake of the huge creatures on the Noah continent, you must stop him. Stop him. How could it be so easy? With Sauron Soras's words, you is Sauron. Sauron Sorkit. When Ron heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. However, looking at Aurora's serious expression, he still nodded firmly. No matter what, I will do my best. Roar. At this moment, an earth-shattering roar sounded out from nearby, giving everyone a fright. Subsequently, two powerful god domain auras abruptly spread out, causing everyone's expressions to shake. It's the chimera that guards the elven forest and the mountain giant. Aurora cried out involuntarily. Sauron has alarmed these two fellows. Everyone looked into the distance, only to see two gigantic figures appear in front of Solon. One had two heads, and its body was covered in patterns. It was a strange beast from the realm of the gods, flying in the air. The other was a giant whose entire body seemed to be made of stone. It was as tall as a 10-story building. The mountain giant and the chimera, the two divine guardians of the elves, finally stood out when Sauron was about to attack the World Tree. Powerhouses of other races, leave the elven forest. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously. The mountain giant Montan spoke. His voice was powerful and mellow. It was as vast as a mountain, and also like the sound of two huge rocks rubbing against each other. At this moment, he stretched out his hand and raised a huge tree high up, supporting it on his shoulder like a stick. He was ready for battle. Gah! The chimera also let out a long hiss in response. It was the divine guardian of the elven forest, so it stood out at this moment. Scram! At this moment, the huge king of hell, Sauron, became impatient. He roared and stretched out his right hand. Powerful black flames rolled back, forming a huge black ball of light. It blasted toward the chimera, the mountain giant, and the chimera. Powerful, destructive divine power exploded from Sauron's body. For a moment, the temperature of the space rose to the highest point like boiling water. The trees in the elven forest also seemed to be roasted by the high temperature, and the leaves curled up from the heat. The two-headed chimera opened its mouth. One of its mouths spat out powerful lightning, while the other spat out a large amount of acid. The mountain giant also took a step forward, swinging the huge tree branch in his hand and swinging it over. It was going to be hit by this heavy stick. Its power was comparable to any powerful divine skill. Rumble. The fierce battle shook the earth, and half the sky was dyed red. No, it's useless. The difference in their strength is too great. Ron clenched his fists tightly. The rims of his eyes reddened. Both the chimera and the mountain giant were low-level god realm masters. The gap between them and a mid-level god realm master like him was too great, not to mention fighting against Sauron. Sauron, the king of hell, only used a few moves to send the two guardians of the elven forest flying. Die! The stubborn resistance of the two elven guardians finally angered Sauron. Powerful, destructive divine power exploded from his body. In an instant, the crisp green elven forest turned into a blazing hell. Gah! The two-headed chimera let out a miserable hiss. Sauron lifted it up by its tail and swung it violently. Boom! It fell heavily into the water, splashing up huge waves dozens of feet high. Petrifying skin. Facing the powerful king of hell, the mountain giant, who had the strength of a god's domain, did not dare to be careless. He cast a powerful defensive skill on himself, and the stone skin on his body was covered with a layer of green, looking tougher. I'll fight it out with you. The scarred mountain giant finally became angry. He raised the tree in his hand and slammed it at Sauron. Bang! Sauron sneered and teleported away. The mountain giant's attack missed its target. Be careful, he's behind you. Ron, who had been staring at the battlefield, could not help but shout. He wanted to remind the confused mountain giant. Unfortunately, Ron's reminder came too late. Sauron's huge palm was like a sharp knife, piercing straight into the mountain giant's heart. Then destructive divine power erupted. Boom! There was a flash of fire, followed by an earth-shaking explosion. Countless stones scattered like meteors across the sky. In just a moment, the mountain giant's hard body was blown to pieces. Defeated, the two elven guardians could not withstand a single blow from King Sauron. They could not even hold on for a minute. All this made all the powerhouses of the divine realm stunned. The fighting spirit that had been ignited was once again shattered under the divine power of the king of hell. Gah! Sauron let out a long sigh. The hot breath he exhaled turned into a large amount of smoke. At this time, he turned his head slightly and looked at the world tree that was as tall as a mountain. There was a strange brilliance in his bloodthirsty eyes. Roar! Sauron's huge body was like a hungry wolf that saw raw meat. He pounced on the world tree, Nerdrassil. His huge, sharp claws fell on the trunk of the world tree, and flames with a little destructive breath burned fiercely. We will fight it out. Undine gritted her teeth. The World Tree was tortured by Sauron. Her heart was bleeding, and a will to die was released. Kill. Without exception, everyone was determined to die. Under the leadership of Ron and the other powerhouses of the Divine Realm, they launched the final attack on Sauron. Spear of Death. Divine Forbidden Spell, Destructive Thunder, Blazing Arrow, Dark Dragon Breath, Falling Stars. Countless magic and skills fell on Sauron like raindrops. The tragic powerhouses of Noah gathered their last strength and played a song of despair. At this time, Sauron's body shone brightly. The powerful divine power of destruction poured out in an instant, spreading in an arc. The earth was burning red like the flames from hell, revealing bursts of fire. Boom, boom, boom. All the powerhouses of the divine realm were knocked down by this terrifying power. The powerful demonic beasts could not maintain their huge bodies. They turned into their human forms and fell. Ron struggled to get up from the blazing ground. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and there was a look of unwillingness in his eyes. Powerful, too powerful. The power of King Sauron was unparalleled. Roar! At this time, Sauron hugged the World Tree tightly, and the powerful divine power of destruction broke out again. The whole earth began to shake, and the light of the World Tree became extremely dim. Countless leaves fell down like a creature full of fear. Everyone could feel the tremor of the World Tree. He's asking me for help. At this moment, Ron took a deep breath and finally understood what Undine was talking about. His heart was full of shock. The World Tree, Nerdrassil, was actually a creature full of wisdom. At this moment, Ron even received a signal from the World Tree. Although it was in the ancient Elven language, Ron quickly understood the meaning of it. But what can I do? I'm not Sauron's opponent at all. Looking at Sauron's body that was bigger than a mountain giant and more powerful than a demon, Ron felt powerless in his heart. He had never been so eager for power. Power! I need power now. Anything is good. I need great power, Ron shouted loudly in his heart. His fists were clenched tightly, and his nails were deeply inserted into his flesh. The powerhouses of Noah were also trembling. Without exception, they all received the distress signal from the World Tree, and they could do nothing. Chapter 740. Boom! The World Tree was finally pushed down. In the roots under the fallen field, a huge breath of life came from afar and rushed out crazily. 1 point. 2 points. Countless breaths of life turned into a little starlight, like a school of fish rushing into Soren's body. Ha! Ha! Soren absorbed the huge life force in big mouthfuls with a look of extreme joy on his face. Ron reached out and grabbed a little starlight in the air. He looked down and was shocked. In his hand was a woman the size of a palm. She had the face and body of an elf. She was naked and had a pair of translucent wings on her back like Aurora. Her small body emitted a large amount of life force. What is this? Ron cried out involuntarily. This is an elf. A low voice came from his side. Ron looked back and saw that Undine was crying. They are the embodiment of the source of life. Source of life? Ron was stunned. He knew that elves and elves were two different concepts. One was an element, and the other was life. However, elves and elves looked so similar. What was the relationship between them? Only God could make it clear. At this time, Ron felt that the elf in his hand moved as if she was pulled by a powerful force and broke free from his hand. The elf exclaimed and struggled, but her body flew back involuntarily. She floated high in the air and was finally absorbed into the body of Soren, the king of hell. At this time, Soren's body also changed. The gray color on his skin was gone, revealing the original color. It was a dark red skin with many irregular bumps. It looked abnormally terrifying. Sure enough, Sauron hasn't completely resurrected yet. The dark mage named Longinu only resurrected his soul, and his body is still in a dead state. However, if he absorbs that huge life power again, it's only a matter of time before he's truly resurrected. Ron thought quietly, but he could only be anxious. He had no way to deal with the powerful king of hell. As Soren continued to absorb the life force, some strange phenomena began to appear. The plants and trees around Nordrassel seemed to have lost all their life force. They began to wither and wither quickly. The river water in the elven forest began to become gray, turbid, and lifeless, emitting bursts of stench. The fat river fish flopped in the water, and soon their stomachs turned upside down. All this was terrible. Ron and the others did not dare to imagine what the Noah continent would become after losing the source of life. No, I have to stop him. Undine was anxious. She struggled to take a step forward, but she fell heavily to the ground. She had no strength. Despair shrouded the world like a haze from the distant sky. All the gods of Noah continent stood. They watched the world step by step towards death, but they could do nothing. The life force of the world tree was gradually disappearing. Countless branches and leaves were drying up and shrinking. It did not even have the power to call for help. Damn it, is the Noah continent over? Could it be that there's really no other way? Ron trembled all over. The despair and fear on his face were constantly alternating. Just when everyone was worried about the fate of the Noah continent, they saw a figure in black appear in the distant sky of the elven forest. It was a middle-aged man of medium build. At this moment, he stood quietly in the air, staring at everything in front of him with a pair of emotionless eyes. A white aura formed around his body, as if a small ray of light was revealed in the gray sky. It seems that it's still not enough, the middle-aged man in black murmured. His face was full of disappointment. Their strength is still too weak. The middle-aged man's eyes stared at Soren, who was lying on the world tree, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. It seems that I have to do it, as the middle-aged man said. He stretched out his hand slightly. Swish, a long standard sword suddenly appeared in his hand, exuding a bright luster. At this time, Aurora's eyes inadvertently swept past, pointed to the distance, and suddenly screamed. Ron, look, what is that? Hearing Aurora's voice, Ron froze for a moment. He turned his head and looked. Suddenly, his eyes opened wide, showing a look of extreme disbelief. Lord Noah. What? Lord Noah? Seeing Noah suddenly appear, Raffield's face was filled with shock, and then he became extremely ecstatic. Lord Noah is back. Lord Noah is back. The Noah continent is saved. Frigga said excitedly. I knew it. Lord Noah would not abandon the Noah continent. Undine also breathed a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, Ron was still frowning. That's right, Lord Noah was back, but would he be a match for the King of Hell, Soren? Only those who had fought with Soren knew the horror of his power. It was a feeling of invincibility. At this time, Soren also noticed the existence of Noah. Who are you? Soren stopped his movements and said in a low and extremely slow voice. His red eyes stared at Noah. At this moment, Soren had recovered most of his consciousness. Unlike the strong people of the Noah continent, when facing Noah, even someone as powerful as Soren felt a trace of threat. Since you asked, I'll tell you. Noah smiled coldly and took a step forward. I'm the manager of this Noah continent. My name is Noah. Plain manager? Soren's pupils shrank, and then he laughed nastily. Hee hee. So what if you're a plain manager? Even if you're a plain manager, in front of me, you'll have to die. While speaking, the black flames on Soren's body burned brightly, and a blazing aura of destruction burned the sky. Solon wasn't interested in plain managers. Some plain managers were low-level God Realm characters at most. The better ones were mid-level or high-level God Realm characters. In Solon's eyes, they weren't worth mentioning at all. In the process of conquering subplanes, who knew how many plane managers had died in the hands of the Burning Legion? Facing Noah, Soren was full of confidence. This time, he took the initiative to make a rare move. With monstrous power, a ferocious and terrifying demon formed behind Soren, as if a king had descended, full of disdain for the world. Is that so? The corners of Noah's mouth curved slightly. He slowly raised the long sword in his hand, and traces of dazzling yellow light spread out. The majesty of a strong person filled the entire corner. Sword of heaven and earth, Noah shouted. He raised the long sword in both hands high, and with the powerful might of heaven and earth, he pressed it down on Soren. Boom! A huge golden sword appeared from the horizon, and the sharp sword aura surged in all directions. The golden light was like the sun shining, and the space shook and cracked. Waves of earth dozens of feet high rose from the ground, and countless huge trees and stones were swept into the air. Roar! Soren let out a scream. From his chest to his abdomen, his body was split open like tofu by the huge golden sword. Under the golden light, it shattered inch by inch. Impossible. It's impossible. How can you have such powerful strength? You're not a God Realm powerhouse at all. You're definitely not. Soren let out a desperate howl. Shock, anger, and unwillingness appeared on his face. Before he finished speaking, a large amount of flames burst out from his body. The flames burned the sky, and his huge body was swallowed up in an instant. Not good. Dodge quickly. Everyone dodged, lest they be accidentally swept in. Boom, boom, boom. Under the illumination of the golden light, Soren's body began to disintegrate, turning into black smoke and disappearing between heaven and earth. The golden sword not only destroyed Soren's body, but also his soul. Soren was dead. Unlike before when his physical body and soul were sealed, he could no longer be resurrected. After Soren died, countless sources of life gushed out from his body, like starlight floating in the sky. Little by little, they fell and gradually disappeared from the earth. If you had recovered to your peak, you might have been able to fight against me. But it's a pity. The 100,000 years have already hollowed out your body, and in the battle with the Lich King, you lost your soul. Therefore, you are destined to not be my opponent today. Noah put away his sword and muttered to himself. Soren died just like that. The experts of Noah continent were dumbfounded. No one would have thought that the powerful Soren would not be able to withstand a single move from Noah. Was this Lord Noah's true strength? Looking at Noah, who put away his sword as if nothing had happened, all the experts felt like they were dreaming. Just a moment ago, the world was almost destroyed, but in the blink of an eye, it was as good as new. Noah, worthy of being called the Savior. No wonder the entire continent was named after him. Ron's eyes were filled with shock. He once thought that after entering the mid-level God realm, he could almost be on par with Lord Noah. But in reality, the gap between him and Lord Noah was like heaven and earth. Lord Noah's strength and realm were not something he could touch at the moment. Ron didn't even know what kind of power Lord Noah used. Ron's thirst for power became even more intense. He wanted to enter a higher realm. With the return of the source of life, the earth began to recover its original appearance. The grass turned green, the river became clear, and the entire elven forest regained its vitality. The world tree that had been toppled slowly returned to its original state in the spring of life, and its wounded body also began to heal. Verdant branches extended from the huge, castle-like trunk, and the intertwined roots nourished the surroundings along with the soil. The gray haze in the sky disappeared. An ray of sunlight penetrated through the clouds, sprinkling on the earth. The Noah continent, which had been ravaged by the Burning Legion, seemed to be glowing with vitality once again. The Burning Legion's military expedition to the Noah continent finally came to an end at this moment. Countless evil souls covered in blood slept forever on the Noah continent. Lord Noah, seeing Noah's figure descend from the sky, the experts of the God realm saluted one after another. This was a kind of respect that came from the bottom of their hearts, reverence for the strong. Lord Noah nodded indifferently. No expression could be seen on his face, as if he had done something insignificant. His gaze swept past the experts of the God realm one by one, pausing on Ron's face for a moment, and then pointed at several experts of the God realm. All of you come with me, Lord Noah. Everyone saluted and answered one after another. Noah's body slowly rose and flew toward the west. No one dared to delay and immediately followed. After flying for about 15 minutes, Lord Noah's figure moved and landed on an unknown mountain peak. He stretched out his hand, and the calm space trembled, spreading out like ripples in water. Noah opened a spatial rift out of thin air and walked in. The God realm powerhouses of the Noah continent looked at each other in confusion. Although Noah was a plane manager, he generally did not pay much attention to the affairs of the continent and had little contact with the experts of the God realm. Even Firth had only met him a few times. Why'd he call us here? Chapter 741. The experts followed Noah into the spatial rift and arrived at a strange space. This space was familiar to them. It was the headquarters of the Mercenary Union and also the place where they could exchange black crystal coins. This was Noah's home. In a small courtyard, Noah waved his hand and stopped the crowd. "Wait outside for a moment. Ron, come in with me." Unexpectedly, Noah didn't intend to chat with the crowd. Instead, he directly called for Ron. Ron was a little surprised. He and Noah looked at each other and nodded. Under the envious gazes of the experts, they followed Noah up the stairs of the courtyard. Frigga watched Noah and Ron's figures disappear at the end of the corridor before she slowly turned her head and glanced at Firth. "Lord Patriarch, what do you think Lord Noah's strength is? Why can't I feel a trace of the aura of an expert from Lord Noah's body? I'm not sure about Lord Noah's strength." Laffield stood there with his hands behind his back and sighed slightly. "What I'm sure of is that his strength is definitely much greater than ours, reaching a level that we can't imagine. The reason why you can't feel how powerful Lord Noah is because he is already cultivated to the realm of returning to one's original state." Returning to one's natural state? Frigga blinked her eyes, somewhat puzzled. "Yes, returning to one's natural state." Firth nodded. "When one's strength reaches Lord Noah's level, they're no longer like us, who rely on releasing powerful pressure to intimidate others. A true expert only needs a glance, a movement, or even a thought to destroy the opponent's mind. On the surface, he looks just like an ordinary person." "Yes." Hao Qin on the side also nodded and sighed. "I have known Lord Noah for a long time. Before, I mistakenly thought that the gap between me and Lord Noah was only a little bit. Only today did I know that the gap between me and Lord Noah is so big." Hao Qin shook his head, his face full of helplessness. When he was young, he had once challenged Noah. However, at that time, Noah only used one move to defeat him. At that time, Hao Qin was not convinced. He used Noah as his goal and crazily cultivated, hoping that one day he could defeat Noah. Only today did he know how ridiculous this idea was. Noah's strength was far beyond their imagination. Lord Noah only used one move to kill Lord Noah, who made everyone helpless. Each of these powerful magic beasts stood at the pinnacle of Noah mainland. They once thought that God Realm was the most powerful force in this world. However, the appearance of the Burning Legion shattered their understanding of the world's power. Only now did they realize that above God Realm, there was still mid-level God Realm, or even a force stronger than mid-level God Realm. For example, Noah, even Ron, a young human in his 20s who had yet to reach his 30s, had the strength of a mid-level God Realm, far surpassing those older magic beasts who thought of themselves as a higher race. Thinking of Noah's strength, everyone lost their interest in talking and fell silent, each with their own thoughts. Ron followed Noah to a room. He had been to this room before. It was Lord Noah's study room. The study room's decorations were the same as before. In the middle of the room was a large antique desk with beautiful curved patterns engraved on the edges. "Sit." Noah smiled, pointing at the spacious chair in front of the desk, extending his hand and inviting Huang Xiaolong to sit. "There's no one else here. Feel free to sit." Ron nodded and found a seat to sit down, carefully sizing up Noah. Perhaps it was because of that earth-shattering sword strike, but compared to the last time, Ron felt that Noah was less approachable and more domineering. Noah also sat down behind the desk, sizing up Ron from head to toe. He smiled and said with a pleasant expression, "Ron, I believe you must have a lot of questions in your heart, right?" "Yes." "Then what do you want to know?" Noah smiled, taking the initiative to ask. Ron took a deep breath, his pitch-black eyes staring into Noah's eyes. "What I want to know is, Lord Noah, have you always been in the Noah continent and never left?" Ron's unceremonious question caused the atmosphere in the room to become tense. Traces of gunpowder filled the air. Noah didn't expect Ron's first question to be this. He frowned and stared at Ron. Ron also calmly looked back at Noah without any fear in his eyes. Noah smiled and scratched his head. "To be honest, I didn't expect your first question to be this. That's right. From a moment the Burning Legion descended on the Noah continent, I've always been here." Noah smiled and readily admitted. "Why?" Hearing this, Ron's eyes faintly revealed anger. He clenched his fists so tightly that the veins on his hands were exposed. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Lord Noah, since you are so powerful, why didn't you do anything when the creatures of the Noah continent were being massacred? Why didn't you do anything when the Strength Lords died? Why didn't you do anything when we were all beaten up by Sophia? Why?" Ron had reason to be angry. Ever since the Burning Legion descended on the Noah continent, they brought a devastating disaster to the Noah continent. Countless creatures were slaughtered by the Burning Legion like pigs and dogs. All the races of the Noah continent paid a cruel price to resist the Burning Legion's attack. Even the Scourge Church's Undercity was almost destroyed. At that time, if Lord Noah had been here, then none of this would have happened. Thinking of the shocking corpses in the center of Quebec City, Ron's heart bled. Among those corpses, there were captive humans, beast men, elves, and magic beasts. Those were all living creatures. Why? Noah asked and smiled. He glanced at Ron and asked in return, "Why should I do anything? Why should I do anything?" Ron was stunned by Noah's question. He never thought that he would get such an answer. "I am the plane manager of the Noah continent, not the plane guardian. The life and death of the Noah continent has nothing to do with me." Noah answered with a smile, his expression cold. "That's right. Why would Lord Noah do anything?" Perhaps in the eyes of a powerhouse like Lord Noah, the lives of ordinary creatures aren't worth mentioning. After thinking this through, Ron took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Although he felt that Noah's words were reasonable, he still couldn't forgive Noah in his heart. Thinking of the corpses in Quebec City, Ron's heart ached. Noah smiled. "Ron, I know what you're thinking. Although the Noah continent is named after me, the responsibility of protecting the Noah continent can only be left to you. Unfortunately, I'm very disappointed in your performance." Noah sighed as he leaned back on the sofa. "Many of you lost the courage to resist when the Burning Legion arrived." Ron was silent. He knew that Lord Noah was speaking the truth. Not to mention others, even he himself had been disheartened. The atmosphere in the room eased, and Noah said to Ron, "Ron, although you're the strongest among all the powerhouses in the divine realm, in the eyes of the powerhouses in the main plane, you're still pitifully weak. With your strength, how can you bear the heavy responsibility of protecting this continent?" "Yes, I know." Ron could only admit honestly. "Compared to you, my lord, I still have a long way to go. The difference between you and me isn't in strength, but in realms. However, realms rely on comprehension and can only be found by chance. But for now, the most urgent thing for you to improve is your strength." Noah paused at this point and smiled, revealing Ron's thoughts. "Ron, do you want to improve your strength as soon as possible?" "Improve my strength?" When Ron heard this, he was stunned. Ever since he saw the great strength of Sauron and Noah, Ron had always desired power. "Lord Noah, do you have a way for me to improve my strength as soon as possible?" Ron was surprised and delighted. "That's right." Noah nodded and said with a smile, "The best way to improve your strength is to fight. You can even comprehend the laws in battle and improve your realm. So, I plan to let you go to other planes to train and improve your strength as soon as possible." Noah smiled and finally spoke his mind. "Lord Noah, you plan to arrange for us to train in other planes?" When Ron heard this, he immediately understood. He tried his best to speak in a calm tone, but his voice was trembling. Ron remembered that when he was still a powerhouse of the sacred domain, Dean Prats had taken him to the snow orchid continent for a mission. That mission had been approved by Lord Noah. It was that black crystal coin mission that not only had Ron earn a lot of money, but it had also broadened his horizons. Most importantly, he had obtained the inheritance of the Lich King in the death ruins of the snow orchid continent, raising his strength from the sacred domain to the divine realm. If the Burning Legion hadn't descended, Ron wouldn't have thought of increasing his strength at all. However, looking back now, the pool in the Noah continent was too small. He needed to go to larger space. Ron thought for a moment. One last question. Lord Noah, what is your true strength? Could it be that you are the legendary god? Chapter 742. Ron, what did Lord Noah say to you? When Ron walked out of Noah's study, he was surrounded by Frigga and the others in the back garden. Every one of them had a questioning expression on their faces. Ron hurriedly told them what Noah said earlier. What? You said Lord Noah opened up a new mission. Undine was astonished when she heard this. That's great. I've been wanting to go out and train for a long time. Li Jiao rubbed his fists and said with a smile. Hearing that there was an opportunity to go out and train, everyone was in high spirits. After all, an opportunity to go out and train was too rare. With Noah controlling the space channel, those experts naturally did not dare to voice their anger. Knowing that this time it was Ron leading the team, everyone's tense hearts finally relaxed. With a powerful mid-level god realm divine Magus helping them, what difficulty couldn't they overcome? Ron, when are you leaving? I need to go back and pack. Frigga turned her head and smiled at Ron. Ron pondered for a moment. I also need to return to Gloom City to prepare. 7 days. 7 days later. Let's meet at the Mercenary Association headquarters 7 days later. We'll set off together then. All right. Frigga nodded. All right, Ron. What is the plan Lord Noah wants us to go to this time? Before leaving, Firth seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly asked. Ron thought for a moment. I think it's a secondary plane called the Land of Exile. I heard that it's a very dangerous place. There are countless powerful mutated beasts there, as well as many teams from other planes. I understand. Firth nodded. He already understood the meaning behind Ron's words. In a dangerous and foreign plane, the most frightening thing was not the seemingly powerful mutated beasts, but the adventurers from other planes. This was an irrefutable truth in the Noah mainland's mercenary world, and it was also applicable in foreign planes. In a small room on the second floor, Noah stood quietly in front of the window, watching the God Realm Masters leave one after another. His brows were tightly furrowed as he revealed a thoughtful expression. Noah was wearing a blue slim-fitting double-breasted robe. Her white-gloved hands were gently placed on her chin. Her blonde hair was combed back, and her sword-like eyebrows were tall. She looked very heroic in her middle age. Lord Noah, are you really planning to open the spatial passage? Behind Noah, an old woman had appeared out of nowhere. She was Noah's servant, Mary. She was wearing a servant's uniform and was holding a tray of black tea as she stood respectfully behind Noah. Not bad. Noah seemed to have made up his mind. He nodded heavily and let out a long sigh. It's time to let go of some things. Not only the powerhouses of the God Realm, but even the powerhouses of the sacred domain and ordinary powerhouses have the right to go to other planes to gain experience. But this way, wouldn't the Noah continent fall into endless chaos? Lord Noah, don't forget, when that time comes, the powerhouses of various planes and ambitious people will open spatial passages to come here. Even the main plane. I'm afraid the entire Noah continent will become a battlefield. Noah was still frowning, not saying anything. Lord Noah, have you forgotten how your homeland was destroyed? Do you want this history to repeat itself on the Noah continent? Mary became agitated. She raised her voice, and the tea on the tray started to sway. Sigh. After a long silence, Noah suddenly let out a long sigh. He turned around and stared at Mary with his deep blue eyes. I haven't forgotten. Of course, I won't forget. My dream is to build a world where there is only peace and no killing, where all external invasions are cut off. A world like a paradise, For the past 100,000 years, I've been doing this in order to not attract the attention of the powerhouses of the main plane and other planes. I even closed the spatial passage and did my best to prohibit the powerhouses of the Noah continent from going out to gain experience. Except for the already destroyed Omros, Noah's expression became agitated. For the past 100,000 years, in order to protect the Noah continent and this peaceful world, I've prevented countless powerhouses from spying on the Noah continent. In the spatial rifts, I've fought with powerful powerhouses from other planes, killing them and forcing them to flee. Some of them were even stronger than Sauron. At this point, Noah took a deep breath and lowered his voice. But is this really good? Or is it good for the powerhouses of the Noah continent? Many of them have been stagnant since they set foot in the early stages of the divine realm. They don't have the opportunity to gain experience, and there's no room for improvement. A main battle legion from the main plane of hell can casually send out a team and turn the entire Noah continent upside down. Noah closed his eyes tightly. I admit that this is a test I gave them to see how they would perform when the crisis of the other plane arrives. But I was wrong. They have no ability to stop all this. Noah's eyes were tightly shut. Yes, in the countless worlds of other planes, conquering and being conquered was an eternal theme. Some of the larger secondary planes had even become targets of the main plane and were caught in the flames of war. Some of the natives had even been killed off by the conquerors, and some had even been reduced to vassals of the main plane's army. If not for Noah's constant protection, the Noah continent would have been able to avoid such a tragic fate. Just the Burning Legion's expeditionary force alone was enough to almost destroy the Noah continent. Noah opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. Only now do I understand. Although protected children can grow up safely, without experiencing wind and rain, they will never grow. They will forever be stuck at the early stages of the God realm. All of this is not what I want, Mary thought for a moment. Lord Noah, then why did Ron's strength reach mid-stage God realm? Could it be he had some fortuitous encounter? I don't know. Him stepping into mid-stage God realm can only be said to be an accident. Noah thought for a moment, then shook his head. Although Ron's strength is the strongest on the Noah continent, in other planes a mid-stage God realm master is nothing. In other words, that mission to the Snow Orchid continent was deliberately arranged by Lord. Mary thought for a moment before realization dawned on her. It was for Ron that you specially opened the space channel to let them go to the Snow Orchid continent? Correct. This is also to promote their growth. The divine necromancer Ron is one of the people I pay the most attention to. Noah paused, a wry smile on his face. Perhaps one day I will hand over the entire Noah continent to what? You mean to let Ron become the plane manager of the Noah continent? Mary was shocked. Her grip loosened, and the tray in her hand fell to the ground along with the cup, shattering into pieces with a loud crash. The Noah continent that was ravaged by the Burning Legion was a scene of devastation. The Scourge Church's Gloom City was no exception. Traces of war were left everywhere. Countless workers were repairing the broken city walls. Although they had been cleaning for many days, there was still a faint smell of blood in the air. In the Gloom City's teleportation point, a large group of people were sending Ron off. Among them were Homelin, Gus, Vivian, and a large number of important people from the Scourge Church. His 4 wives were also present. Ron, you must come back soon. Ron, you must be careful in a foreign plane. Ron, if you encounter danger, you must run away quickly. Kadina's eyes were red as she threw herself into Ron's arms, sobbing softly as if they were separated by life and death. Ron hugged Kadina, lowered his head, and kissed her forehead as he comforted her. Don't worry, Kadina. I will be back in 3 years, 5 years at most. Ron's gaze fell on Kadina's bulging stomach as he spoke, and he became absent-minded. It will be 3 years at least, 5 years at most. By then, his child would probably be able to run. However, this was something that couldn't be helped. Every family with mercenaries would experience this scene. A wife sending her husband off, and a mother sending her son off on an unknown journey. Perhaps one day, The loved one would return with a large amount of wealth, or perhaps they would welcome a cold corpse, or even bad news. Aurora, Lynn, and Becerra were also standing in the crowd, their eyes filled with reluctance. Ron smiled and waved at Aurora. "Aurora, come here for a moment." Ron took out an exquisite silver necklace and handed it to Aurora. His expression was solemn as he said, "This is a psychic bracelet given to me by Lord Noah. If the Scourge Church is in big trouble, you can input your power into this necklace, and I will receive it immediately." Aurora looked over and saw that Ron was also wearing a necklace around his neck, and it was exactly the same as the one in her hand. She could only nod with tears in her eyes. Ron pulled her into his arms and gave her a long, affectionate kiss. He whispered in her ear, "Help me take good care of Kadena." Aurora nodded with tears in her eyes. Ron hugged everyone before reluctantly leaving. He stepped into the circle of light of the teleportation point and disappeared with a whoosh. In a large hall of the Mercenary Association, the Dark Dragon R.A. Firth, the Fairy Dragon Frigga, the Beaumont Behemoth Hauchin, the lion-headed, human-bodied, phoenix-tailed magic beastie Luo, and the nature magic god Undine had been waiting for a long time. As the circle of light of the teleportation point lit up, Ron's figure appeared in the hall. "Ron, you're here." All the God Realm experts of the Noah continent stood up and saluted. The Ron of today was no longer the young lad from before. He had the strength of a mid-level God Realm expert and was the strongest person besides Noah. "Sorry for making everyone wait." Ron smiled slightly, maintaining his usual modesty. At this time, his gaze fell on a small corner of the hall. It was a wretched-looking old man with a thin and small stature. The loose black robe on his body was extremely incongruous. He was the last of the 5 god-level powerhouses of the magical beast clan, the Dragon Turtle Babu, who had a thin dragon bloodline. In the process of resisting the Burning Legion's demons, he had also made outstanding contributions. Ron looked around and nodded at him as a form of greeting, saying, "Thank you for coming." Chapter 743. As soon as they walked out of the circle of light, they were shocked to see that the teleportation point was already crowded with people of all shapes and sizes. At a glance, there were at least several tens of thousands of people. This is the exiled land. Ron looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief, his mouth wide open in shock. Didn't Lord Noah say that this is a barren land, a place where criminals are exiled from the mortal plane, and that it's the best place for training? There are many people here at the end of the year, but why are there so many people now? Frigga rubbed her eyes and turned her on. "Ron, could Lord Noah have made a mistake?" "I don't think so." Ron scratched his head. "These coordinates are correct. But why is this different from what I imagined?" Luo, who had a lion's head, a human's body, and a phoenix's tail, asked in confusion. At this moment, he had transformed into a tall, valiant-looking middle-aged man with a small mustache. "Move. Don't block the way." As he spoke, a rough voice came from behind him. Luo felt his body being ruthlessly bumped into by someone. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. Luo turned around and saw that the one who bumped into him was an orc who was even taller than him. Black fur covered his entire body. His chest and vitals were covered in sturdy armor. Several sharp spikes protruded from his shoulders, and his 2 large arms were as thick as water buckets. He didn't carry any weapons, either hidden in a space ring or a space bag. His 2 large fangs protruded from his mouth, and his face was fierce. He didn't look like a good person. Luo's anger rose with a whoosh, and he glared at the orc. The orc with black fur glanced at him and sneered. "What are you looking at? You're blocking the way, and you're blaming others?" "You." Luo was enraged when he heard this. He was about to explode, but Ron pulled him back. "Apologies. We're blocking your path." "We'll move out of the way." Ron's eyes flashed. He bent his waist and slightly bowed, pulling Luo to open a path. "That's more like it." The orc with black fur's hand was already on the space bag at his waist, only releasing it after hearing Ron's words. He sneered and looked at Ron. If it weren't for you undead brat being sensible, I would have killed you already. Don't think that I don't dare to make a move. A low-level God Realm brat is arrogant my ass. After saying this, he glared fiercely at D. Luo and strode away. That guy's very strong. At this moment, Ron's voice sounded in everyone's ears. His expression was grave. At least he's not inferior to Sophia. Even I don't have absolute confidence in dealing with him. Sophia. Thinking of this terrifying name, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Someone stronger than Sophia. If it wasn't a mid-level God Realm, who else could it be? No wonder he didn't put the low-level God Realm D. Luo in his eyes. Lawford sighed and patted D. Luo's shoulder, forcing out a smile. Forget it, old man. The beastmen here are different from our Noah continent's beastmen. Since even Lawford said so, D. Luo could only swallow his anger. The Lion Clan and Phoenix Clan were considered a rare high-grade magical beast race on the Noah continent, possessing high talent. Since young, they had stood at the pinnacle of the Noah continent. Other than the great dark dragon Lawfirth, D. Luo had never submitted to anyone. This encounter was a huge blow to him. However, the next blow came one after another. Just a few steps forward stood a large group of unknown black-colored beastmen. From the looks of it, they came from the same clan. There were 20 to 30 of them, and each one of them had the strength of an early god realm. The leader of the group was a mid-level god realm. About 50 meters to the left stood a 3-meter-tall, blue-skinned giant. He looked like a human, but he wasn't. Judging from the aura he was exuding, even Ron couldn't see through his strength. Just by standing there, no one dared to approach within 10 meters of him. Ron couldn't help but sigh. Only when standing on a different plane's land did he feel his own insignificance. This world was too big. Ron recalled what Lord Noah had said to him before he left. Even the god he worshipped was nothing more than a speck of dust in this world. A God Realm Master was even more insignificant. With every step they took, Noah Mainland's experts' confidence crumbled. They slowly put away their arrogance and became cautious. The thirst for power in their hearts grew even stronger. However, there weren't many God Realm Masters here. Among the tens of thousands of people, there were only a few thousand. Most of them were from the sacred domain, but most of them were engaged in business activities. Hello, adventurers from a different plane. Do you need potions? We have all kinds of good potions here. Look, red Great Life Potion, blue Magic Potion, yellow Stamina Potion, as well as purple Full Recovery Potion. All of them were refined by the most specialized alchemists, guaranteed to be effective. Ron's group had just stepped out of the transmission point when they were stopped by a strange-looking beast man who endlessly promoted all kinds of potions. As if by magic, that guy took out multicolor bottles with a price tag on them. Ron knew that it was the price of a set of potions, not a single one. What made Ron depressed was that the potions of life sold by the Calamity Church through Fatty weren't of any use to divine domain experts like them. This was because the potions they sold were small bottles that could only be used by experts of the Master Realm and below. It was practically ineffective for experts of the Saint Realm and above. They had to use medium bottles of potions in order to have a recovery effect. Of course, this wasn't an issue of the size of the bottle, but rather a series of complicated things. At least in Noah Mainland, there weren't any outstanding alchemists capable of refining medium bottles of health potions. If Ron's group wanted to use these potions, they could only buy them outside. Fortunately, when they left Noah Mainland, Lord Noah had already given them a large number of medium bottles of potions, enough for them to use for a certain period of time. "Thank you, but we don't need," Ron waved his hand and politely said. "Then I'm sorry to disturb you." The weird-looking guy left in disappointment. His items are really expensive. I seem to recall that in other planes, a set of medium bottles of health potions costs around 3 or 4 black crystal coins. He sold them for 10 black crystal coins per set. "That price is too high," Frigga said indignantly. Ron smiled faintly. "This is a temporary camp in the wilderness, so the price is naturally higher. Many people sell potions in the city and resell them for a profit." Frigga was flabbergasted. 6 black crystal coins in one go. This money is too easy to earn. As the few of them chatted, they slowly walked out of the temporary camp. At this time, a clamor came from not far ahead. Soon after, a disturbance started. Boom, boom, boom. Several loud sounds came from the distance, followed by a large amount of smoke. A powerful aura permeated the air. What's going on? Undine became nervous. She was the weakest among the people of the Noah continent. After coming here and seeing one powerhouse after another, her fragile confidence quickly crumbled. She was now no different from an ordinary adventurer. It wasn't just Undine. Even Firth, Frigga, and the others put away their arrogance from the Noah continent and became modest and cautious. There are people fighting over there. Ron muttered to himself and glanced at Diluo. It seems to be that black-furred beast man from before. Everyone looked at each other and quickly walked forward. By the time they arrived at the crowd of onlookers, the battle had already begun. The one fighting the black-furred beast man was a strange person whose entire body was pitch black and emitted green flames. The black-furred beast man was holding a huge shield and a one-handed axe, while the other strange person was holding a two-handed longsword. The two of them were exchanging blows in the open wilderness and had already exchanged hundreds of blows. The scene of the two fighting was abnormally intense. Their power spread, and the air was filled with a sticky aura. Boom, boom. Every time their weapons clashed, the space around them would tremble violently. Even though there wasn't much destruction in the surroundings, everything within a few dozen meters of them was filled with destruction. Ron could tell at a glance that the one fighting the black-furred beast man was a genuine mid-level God Realm master, but he didn't know which race he came from. That guy, even if it's me, it would take some effort to deal with him, Ron thought to himself as he looked at the strange person emitting green flames. Boom! The two weapons clashed again. This time, it was the strange person emitting green flames who took a small step back. It was this inadvertent step that indicated that the green-furred beast man was at his limits. This was the perfect opportunity for the black-furred beast man. Go to hell. The black-furred beast man bellowed. The one-handed axe in his hand emitted a powerful light as it hacked down on the green-furred beast man. Gotcha! The green-furred beastman's body was split into two halves. The green-furred beast man struggled for a moment, but the beastman's giant foot stomped down, crushing the green-furred beastman's head. The green-furred beastman's body twitched for a moment before it stopped moving. Hey, overestimating your own strength. The black-furred beast man sneered coldly, turning around and leaving in large strides. By this time, the surrounding crowd had also dispersed. No one was interested in looking at the green-furred beastman's corpse. And ended just like that. Ron watched quietly, his heart filled with shock. He didn't expect that in just a short moment, a mid-level God Realm master would be gone just like that. Hiss! Diluo sucked in a breath of cold air. Luckily, he didn't make a move just now, otherwise the one lying on the ground would be him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but cast a grateful glance at Ron. Frigga sighed, whispering to Firth beside her, Ron's reaction is very fast. A temporary compromise is necessary. Is that so? Firth smiled faintly. That's because you didn't notice Ron's movements when he was talking just now. His right hand was behind his back, lightly pressing on the spatial pouch at his waist. I'm afraid the slightest mistake and he'll make a move. Frigga was stunned. Chapter 744. The group consisted of 5 God Realm demonic beasts, a divine necromancer, and a nature magister. Just like that, a strange combination was born. Although this plane was called the Land of Exile, it wasn't a barren land. A huge forest stretched for thousands of li, with a winding river running through it. Several islands jutted out from the forest, and from time to time, fat fish would jump out of the water and sink back into the river. Ron and his party traveled through the sky. They rode on Raffield's huge body, which had transformed into a dark dragon, and flew slowly in the sky. White clouds flew past, accompanied by the whistling of the wind. Looking around, the beautiful scenery of the Land of Exile could be seen. However, Ron's group wasn't in the mood to appreciate this rare beauty. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the small map in his hand. "This is the temporary camp we came from." Ron pointed at the map as he explained, "There are a total of 7 temporary camps with transmission points in this land of exile. Calculating the distance from here to the second transmission point, even if we fly, it'll take 20 days. We still need to train and fight with demonic beasts." Ron paused for a moment before continuing, "I think we'll need to stay here for at least 3 to 5 years. Everyone nodded in agreement. "Forget about training in a different plane. Even completing a mission in a different plane would take 1 to 2 years. What more training and breakthrough here?" 3 to 5 years was already optimistic. R.A., Firth, Frigga, and the others' goal was to advance to mid-level God Realm, or even higher, high-level God Realm. Some of them even planned to wait for more than 10 years. After all, this was a rare opportunity to train. One last reminder, everyone. The exiled land is different from ordinary secondary planes. This is a higher-level primary plane. Everyone should be careful," Ron said as he put away the map. "Be careful." Just as they were speaking, the black dragon R.A. Firth suddenly shook, startling everyone. Some of them grabbed onto R.A. Firth's scales to prevent themselves from falling off. "What's wrong?" pulled a Firth. Ron, who had regained his senses, hurriedly asked. According to his understanding, the dark dragon Firth had always been flying quickly and steadily, so it wouldn't make such a fatal mistake. "Ron, I don't know why, but the air here is very heavy. It consumes several times more energy than usual. It's very strenuous. My speed is also affected." At this moment, R.A. Firth's voice rang out, accurately reaching everyone's ears. Everyone tensed up when they heard that. Ron pondered for a moment. "It seems that this is the no-fly zone that Lord Noah spoke of. We need to land immediately." The no-fly zone's gravity was several times that of other places. Of course, it wasn't that they couldn't fly. It was just that Ron and the others were too weak to support it. As for the powerhouses of the sacred domain, they couldn't fly at all. The banished landlord plane wasn't a place that the powerhouses of the sacred domain should come to. With the strength of the sacred domain, they wouldn't survive for more than a quarter of an hour. R.A. Firth nodded, tilted his body, and slowly descended. His heavy body carried great gravity, and he stomped on the ground, causing a large amount of dust and a loud noise. Ron and the others jumped down from R.A. Firth's back. R.A. Firth growled and turned back into his human form. "Now we can only walk." Babu shrugged and smiled easily. "Fortunately, flying isn't something I'm good at. I think we shouldn't use our spiritual sense." R.A. Firth pondered for a moment. "If we use our spiritual sense to scan the surroundings, I'm afraid we'll attract the attention of some powerful exotic beasts. What are you afraid of? Aren't we here to train? The more powerful the exotic beasts that come, the better." Hao Qin raised his fist, his fighting spirit soaring. The only other plane that the Noah continent could go to was the continent abandoned by the gods, Omros. However, there were too few powerful exotic beasts in Omros, and there were almost no divine beasts in Omros. What Lord Firth said makes sense. We're not familiar with the banished lands, so it's better to avoid some troubles. Ron thought for a moment. "I have an idea." As he spoke, Ron took out his staff and muttered an incantation. Not long after, a dozen translucent soul-like things were summoned and floated in the air. "What are these?" Frigga looked at them, her eyes filled with curiosity. "These are ghosts. They can sneak into the forest to investigate, and won't be easily discovered by the other party," Ron said as he waved his hand gently. The dozen or so ghosts flew in all directions with a whoosh, disappearing in an instant. The dozen or so ghosts connected with Ron's soul, and it was as if he had a dozen more eyes. Every movement in the surroundings fell under Ron's eyes. Necromancy magic is indeed incredible. Undine sighed. "Although my Scout Gar can do this too, the effect isn't as good as yours, Ron. Everyone has their own advantages." Ron smiled. "Nature magic has its own uniqueness too." With Ron's ghost scouting the way in front, the group advanced much faster. All the experts were full of confidence in Ron. "Awoo! As the group walked, a mournful sound suddenly came from the front. It sounded like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves, adding to the terrifying atmosphere in the silent forest. Not good. Ron's expression changed. Through the eyes of the ghosts, he saw huge black figures scuttling out of the forest. There were many of them, and they were extremely fast. It's bloodthirsty, frenzy wolves. Ron quickly recognized these terrifying creatures. As exotic beasts that lived in groups, they would never act alone. Once they attacked, they would attack in a large group. Bloodthirsty, frenzy wolves? How many are there? Frigga was a little nervous. Generally speaking, exotic beasts that were crazy without intelligence were much stronger than ordinary magical beasts. There are a lot of them, coming from all directions. I'm afraid there are several hundred of them. Ron turned his head, a trace of astonishment on his face. We've been surrounded, what? Firth was shocked. How is that possible? Without scanning with spiritual sense, how did they discover our position? Even exotic beasts had to use their spiritual sense to scan their surroundings. If they used their spiritual sense, the other party would also sense it. It's the smell, D. Luo said without hesitation. When we entered the forest, they already discovered us. So what if they discovered us? Hao Qin grinned maliciously, clenching his fists tightly. He was full of confidence. Bloodthirsty frenzy wolves are only exotic beasts of the sacred domain. It doesn't matter how many of them there are. The difference between the sacred domain and the divine domain was like a chasm. Hearing Hao Qin's words, the group finally relaxed. At this moment, the group's vision blurred. A black figure the size of an adult bull suddenly appeared. It had a sinister wolf head, bloodthirsty eyes, and sharp teeth. Its 4 huge claws were firmly stuck on a protruding rock. Its blood-red eyes stared fixedly at the group. Saliva flowed out from the corner of its mouth and splashed onto the rock, emitting a burst of green smoke. Oh! At this moment, the bloodthirsty frenzy wolf let out a long howl. It seemed to be calling for its companions, but also seemed to be rousing its fighting spirit. Following its howl, more and more black figures drilled out of the forest. At this moment, something strange happened. The leading bloodthirsty frenzy wolf spread opened the 2 wings on its back. The 2 huge black wings lightly flapped, looking even more terrifying and malevolent. These aren't bloodthirsty frenzy wolves. Frigga's eyes were filled with shock. They've already mutated and are even more powerful. The bloodthirsty frenzy wolves with 2 wings were even more terrifying. What was even more shocking was that they all had the strength of the divine domain. There wasn't just one divine domain exotic beast, but a whole pack. The densely packed number of them made one's hair stand on end. Prepare for battle immediately. No, break out to the west. Ron decisively gave the order, but just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, he suddenly changed his mind and told them to break out to the west. After all, the densely packed divine domain exotic beasts in front of them were really too terrifying. Without a moment's hesitation, all the divine domain powerhouses chose to obey in an instant. They all changed into their battle stances at the same time, exerting their strength at the same time and breaking out to the west together. Awoo! R.A. Firth let out a loud roar and transformed into his dark colossal dragon true form. He stretched out his sharp claws and swept down several dozen trees in an instant, opening up a gap in the west. Hao Qin transformed into a huge Beaumont beast. He let out a wild roar and brandished his huge fist, smashing it towards the nearest bloodthirsty frenzy wolf. Boom! With a loud sound, that mutated bloodthirsty frenzy wolf actually opened up its domain in an instant and fiercely collided with Hao Qin's power, bursting forth with powerful sparks. Under the bombardment of Hao Qin's monstrous strength, that bloodthirsty frenzy wolf only took a small step back. It's that strong. Hao Qin's eyes were filled with extreme shock. He had used 70% of his strength in that punch, but it actually only made that bloodthirsty frenzy wolf take a small step back, and this was just one bloodthirsty frenzy wolf. Pung! At this time, the bloodthirsty berserk wolves also began to counterattack. They opened their mouths and released purple balls of magic. These purple balls of magic contained terrifying power, and like raindrops, these balls of magic bombarded the group of people. A burst of sharp pain followed by an intense burning sensation spread through their bodies. R.A. Firth and Hao Qin's huge bodies couldn't hide in the dense forest at all. They couldn't fly in the sky, and if they transformed into their human forms, their fighting strength would be greatly reduced. They could only become targets for the pack of wolves. At this moment, it was too late for them to regret their huge bodies that they were so proud of. Death Guard. In the end, it was still Ron who saved them. A huge skeletal object fell from the sky and firmly enveloped R.A. Firth and Hao Qin, blocking all those purple balls of magic. Life recovery. Undine didn't dare to be negligent. She took out her dark green magic staff and cast Life Recovery on R.A. Firth and Hao Qin. The injuries on their bodies instantly healed. Boom, boom, boom. More and more bloodthirsty frenzy wolves rushed out of the forest. They weren't in a hurry to approach. Instead, they were like mobile turrets that constantly released powerful purple balls of magic. Countless magic balls of magic fell on Ron's position, turning the dense forest into a sea of fire. The most terrifying thing was that the flames brought by these purple balls of magic were constantly burning. Not only were their bodies affected, but even their souls were affected. All around firepower coverage. Ron's heart trembled. These guys actually knew how to fight. They were really too difficult to deal with. Not only were they terrifying in numbers, but they also had a tacit understanding and teamwork. Was this the true strength of exotic beasts from another plane? This was too terrifying. How were they supposed to fight? Lord Noah, how do you expect us to train like this? It would be good enough if we didn't die here. Good GG. Chapter 745. Not good. The death protection won't last much longer. Seeing this, Ron inwardly cried out in alarm. He didn't expect these low-level god realm bloodthirsty wild wolves to be so powerful that they could even break through a mid-level god realm's defensive skill. Forest Fury. At this time, Nature High Priestess Undine made her move. She waved the green nature staff in her hand, the tip of the staff emitting a green light. Boom, boom. Under the illumination of the green light, large swathes of trees collapsed. Crash. Countless withered tree warriors staggered to their feet and launched a suicidal attack on the bloodthirsty wild wolves. Unfortunately, the withered tree warriors that merely possessed Master Realm strength were quickly crushed by the God Realm bloodthirsty wild wolves' attacks. They were as fragile as paper, burned to ashes by the purple flames. Watching this, Ron sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, he finally understood a principle. Low-level and mid-level summon creatures were only effective against low-level and mid-level opponents. Against a God Realm Master of the same level, no matter how many of these summon creatures there were, it was useless. Many times, Ron had thought that his sea of skeletons was already very powerful. Even if they weren't that strong, relying on their terrifying numbers, they were enough to deal with any opponent. Only now did he realize how wrong he was. No matter how many of them there were, they couldn't replace physical strength. Only someone like Huang Xiaolong, who had personally participated in an actual battle, could fully understand this principle. By this time, Ron's death protection had been destroyed. The super giant beasts, the Black Dragon and Beaumont, had also reverted to their human forms, fleeing to the west in a sorry state. Without their true forms, their strength was greatly reduced. They couldn't even withstand the attacks of a single bloodthirsty wild wolf. Fortunately, Fairy Dragon Frigga cast an energy shield over Firth and Hao Qin, otherwise they would have been set on fire in just a moment. The temperature of those purple flames was so high that it was only slightly lower than the flames of destruction from hell. Even Ron didn't expect that R.A., Firth, and Hao Qin, the overlords of the Noah continent, would end up in such a sorry state here. It was easy to imagine how terrifying the land of exile that Lord Noah sent them to was. Perhaps this place could really train people, but if they were not careful, it would not be worth it to die here. Thinking of this, Ron took a deep breath, and a faint green color appeared in his dark eyes. You guys go first, I'll bring up the rear. How can that be? Ron, you're the captain. Undine's eyes widened as she retorted loudly. It's because I'm the captain that all of you have to listen to my orders, Ron said resolutely and decisively without even thinking. At this time, he had already forgotten about the so-called seniority. Go, immediately, break out of the encirclement to the west. Quickly, boom, boom, boom. Countless purple balls of light exploded towards Ron's group, and raging flames ignited in the forest. The weaker beasts either hid or let out howls of grief as they were burned to ashes. Death withering, Ron chanted as cyan soul fires revolved around his body. His eyebrows rose as he gently raised the dragonbone staff in his hand, and a huge amount of death aura instantly burst out. Countless corrosive gases kept appearing on the ground and in the sky, wrapping around the bloodthirsty berserk wolves like a swarm of bees. Sizzling sounds could be heard when they touched their bodies and fur, and a large amount of smoke was emitted at the same time. Awoo! The bloodthirsty berserk wolves let out howls of grief as their bodies started melting, turning into skeletons in a short time. These corrosive gases were really too tyrannical. Under the obstruction of Ron's death withering, the pack of wolves finally slowed down. As they ran, a wide river finally appeared in front of the Noah continent's realm of God Team. It was about a few hundred meters long, and the current was very fast. The river water splashed onto the rocks on the shore, creating huge splashes. Quickly go over, Firth didn't even think as he stepped into the water. Hao-Chin, Diluo, Undine, and Frigga quickly followed, not caring about the river water soaking their skirts. Roar! At this time, another magic beast from the god realm, Babu, let out a low roar. He suddenly jumped into the water, and at the same time his body changed. A strange creature with a hard shell, a long neck, a head like a dragon, and 4 limbs like a tortoise appeared in front of everyone. The monster with the dragon head and tortoise body spoke, "Ride on my back. I'll carry you over." Everyone was overjoyed as they all jumped onto Babu's back. Babu, who had transformed into his original form, kicked his 4 limbs and left the shore like an arrow. Babu's huge body was as nimble as a fish in the water, and he soon reached the center of the river. Oh no, where's Ron? Diluo slapped his head, only now remembering that Ron hadn't even gotten on the boat. We don't have time to wait for him. If we walk any slower, we might all die on the shore. Babu coldly said from the front. For some reason, he didn't have a good impression of this necromancer, who wasn't even 30 years old. Firth frowned, but didn't say anything. If one had to say who was the oldest among the God Realm powerhouses here, it would undoubtedly be this Babu. He was much older than Firth. Being surpassed by the dragons was one thing, but being surpassed by a small human necromancer was something he couldn't accept in his heart. Ron told us to go first, he'll bring up the rear. Undine hesitated. Should we go back and help him? Since he told us to go first, we can only go first. Could it be that we don't listen to our captain's words? Babu sneered, emphasizing the word captain. That's right. Since he's a mid-level god realm, he naturally has a way to escape. Otherwise, how could he be qualified to be our captain? Beaumont's giant beast Hao-Chin also agreed, a faint smile hanging on his face. This, Undine was at a loss for words. She looked at Hao-Chin, then at Babu, and could only swallow the words at the tip of her tongue. Fairy Dragon Frigga had been watching coldly from the sidelines, neither agreeing nor disagreeing with Babu's suggestion. Like all magic beasts, the rise of Ron and the undead led by him made the magic beasts, led by the dragons, feel uncomfortable. They were used to being above all other races, and the rule that had lasted for 100,000 years was suddenly broken. All the magic beasts felt a little unbalanced in their hearts, and the one who broke all this was a human. Even if it was his own grandson, Firth found it hard to accept. However, he was clear in his heart that ever since Ron stepped into the mid-level god realm, The magic beast's rule of the Noah continent for nearly 100,000 years had come to an end. From now on, the Noah continent was the world of the undead. Everyone was sitting on the back of the God Realm's magical beast, Babu, thinking about their own matters. At this time, the surrounding space throbbed, and Ron's black-robed figure slowly appeared. Undine was stunned for a moment, then became pleasantly surprised. "Ron, you're back?" Ron nodded and sat down. At this moment, his face was full of fatigue, with a trace of pain. You're injured?" At this time, Undine noticed that Ron was clutching his abdomen, and blood was constantly flowing down. Drop by drop, the blood dripped on a Babu's back and slowly flowed into the water. It was obvious that his injury was not light. "When I left, I met their king and fought with it. That guy's a mid-level god realm," Ron said indifferently, as if he was talking about something unrelated to him. But the danger was unimaginable. I'll treat you right away." Undine was stunned. She stood up and helplessly took out the dark green staff from the spatial bag at her waist. Ron nodded. "High Priestess, I'll have to trouble you." Amidst Undine's low and powerful chanting, the wound on Ron's abdomen healed little by little. Frigga couldn't help but ask, "That bloodthirsty Wolf King beast, what happened afterwards?" "Dead," Ron said, his tone very simple. "I killed it." Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. To be able to kill the king of dozens of mutated beasts from the god realm and escape unscathed, just how strong was this Ron? At this time, everyone fell silent again. Only Babu snorted coldly, not commenting on Ron's magnificent feat, as if everything was something he should do. Ron smiled bitterly. He naturally knew what these magical beasts were thinking, but in this strange and dangerous plane, unity was the only way out. Even on the Noah continent, he didn't want to have a strained relationship with these magical beasts. When they were about to reach the shore, Babu's expression suddenly changed. "Not good. There's something in the river." Babu's voice had just fallen when, with a splash, the calm water suddenly rippled. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a bloody mouth viciously bit at the people on the dragon turtle's back. The monster in the river was covered in sturdy scales. It had a long and huge mouth, two small eyes as round as copper bells, and a long tail that slapped the river surface, creating huge splashes. "It's a giant Nile crocodile." Everyone cried out in alarm. They immediately recognized this water-attributed beast. Unfortunately, this giant Nile crocodile was a mutated beast. Just like those bloodthirsty wolves, it had the strength of the god realm. This giant Nile crocodile's target was Undine. The sudden attack from the god realm beast made her unable to react. She stood there blankly, as if she had become stupid. "Dodge!" Ron reacted quickly and pushed Undine away. At the same time, he quickly took out his weapon and released an instant small necromancy spell. Frost Nova, the Lich King's exclusive skill. An icy aura instantly condensed, and a cold air emitted froze the surrounding river water. Boom! That giant Nile crocodile was sent flying. Its huge body landed heavily on the river surface, creating a huge splash. The blood that flowed out dyed the river red. So many giant Nile crocodiles. Babu the dragon turtle was stunned. Its body continuously trembled from fear, causing everyone sitting on its back to tremble. One head, two heads, three heads. Chapter 746. Hundreds of Nile giant crocodiles surrounded them like an iron bucket, airtight. This. We are surrounded. Fu Lijia's lips trembled. She had always been high and mighty. So when had she ever encountered such a situation where she had no way out? Break through immediately. Ron quickly calmed down and took out a bottle of bloom medicine from his spatial ring. Gulp, gulp. He drank it and wiped his mouth. At this moment, the Nile giant crocodiles began their attack. They opened their bloody mouths and bit at Babu, who was in his dragon turtle form. Boom, boom, boom. The fierce battle began again. The calm water surface was turbulent. The Godrealm masters of the Noah squad exploded with fighting spirit and attacked the Nile giant crocodile with God-realm strength. Poochie, a sharp white-boned spear pierced through the hard skull of a Nile giant crocodile. The Nile giant crocodile turned its stomach and struggled for a while before it stopped moving. Blood flowed out and dyed the river red. Damn it, these crocodiles are so difficult to deal with. Ron wiped the blood off his head. He was not good at fighting in the water and was secretly distressed. However, he soon realized that the Nile giant crocodile that was killed had been dismembered by the other crocodiles. Ron could not help but be shocked. These Nile giant crocodiles did not even let the corpse of their companion go. At this moment, a Nile giant crocodile opened its mouth and bit Babu's thigh, tearing off a large piece of flesh. Babu cried out in pain, and its wide body began to tremble. Babu, calm down. I can't condense my magic like this. Undine turned around and shouted, I don't want to either. Those guys are biting me. Ah, Babu said, and then let out another cry. The encirclement that they had just broken through was sealed again. The Nile giant crocodiles surrounded them and made everyone's hair stand on end. Babu endured the pain. Quickly think of a way. Otherwise, we will really die here. Frigga's heart trembled. She turned to look at Ron, only to find that Ron was also frowning and at a loss of what to do. Just when everyone was in despair, the Beaumont behemoth Hao Qin suddenly roared. He stretched out his huge fist, which was shining with a frightening golden light. All of you died. Hao Qin's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He raised his fist, which was glowing with a golden light, and slammed it heavily into the water. Boom! With a loud bang, the powerful fist force penetrated the water surface and spread out like waves. Wherever the golden light touched, all the Nile crocodiles were thrown high into the air by the powerful fist force and landed heavily on the water surface. Ron was stunned. Even he did not expect that Hao Qin's fist could cause such a powerful destruction. Although the fist had hit the water surface, the energy wave that spread out covered the entire river. Some of the Nile giant crocodiles were stunned, and the weaker ones were killed on the spot. After the shock wave spread out, the boiling river finally calmed down. On the dry riverbed, the Nile giant crocodiles' corpses were everywhere. Their overturned stomachs revealed a little bit of white. After the punch, Hao Qin finally breathed a sigh of relief. It was as if he had vented something. At this moment, his body was relaxed and his eyes were shining. It was as if he was dozens of years younger. This was an earth-shattering punch. This punch even made R.A. Firth look at it in a new light. Originally, their strength was about the same, but this punch showed that Hao Qin's strength had begun to surpass R.A. Firth's. Don't forget that Hao Qin had thrown that punch while maintaining his human form. This meant that his understanding of the mysteries of power had reached a higher level. Seeing that everyone was staring at him in a daze, even Babu, who had transformed into a dragon turtle, turned around with a shocked expression. Hao Qin frowned and smiled. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and swim. Damn it, I only stunned them. When they wake up, we're all finished. Only when Hao Qin said this did everyone wake up. Babu did not dare to delay and immediately swam to the shore. Without the obstruction of the Nile giant crocodiles, the group quickly reached the shore. After seeing that they were safe, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Babu also returned to his human form. As he had suffered heavy injuries, Undine immediately used nature magic to heal him. However, Frigga could not wait to ask, Hao Qin, that punch just now, how did you do it? Weren't you in your human form at that time? How is it possible? How can you explode with such power? Human form? Ha! Hao Qin smiled proudly. To be honest, the power of that punch just now gave me a shock. Saying that, he took a deep breath and his eyes flashed. Speaking of which, it's quite unexpected. In that blood-red ripple, I suddenly comprehended something. I discovered that the transmission of power is not limited to a straight line. It can exist in any medium and then spread out like ripples on the water. Hao Qin smiled. This is the new mysteries of power that I just comprehended. Vibration. He comprehended it so quickly. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They knew that strength was the easiest to improve, and the hardest to improve was one's realm. Seeing Hao Qian's current state, it was likely that he had advanced by 2 levels. All the God Realm masters on the Noah mainland were holed up in a small continent. Other than relying on their own talent to cultivate, they did not have many opportunities to engage in actual combat. Due to various reasons, they rarely engaged in life and death battles. Moreover, the only God Realm master on the other side, Amos mainland, did not have any God Realm beasts. Thus their strength had remained stagnant. As for Hao Qian, after tens of thousands of years of cultivation and the baptism of the Burning Legion's abyssal war, his strength had swelled to a terrifying level. And now, he had finally broken through the shackles and comprehended the mysteries of strength. Undine trembled, looking at Hao Qian in disbelief. Could it be that you've already broken through? That's right. Hao Qian calmly looked at Undine, saying slowly, I've already broken through to mid-level God Realm. Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Their breathing became heavy as they looked at Hao Qian with eyes full of envy. In just one day, Huang Xiaolong had advanced from low-level God Realm to mid-level God Realm. The difference between this realm was like heaven and earth. Of course, this was inseparable from Hao Qian's hard work and sweat. Without diligent cultivation, how could there be a day when one could break through? There was a trace of disappointment in Firth's eyes. His strength was originally a level higher than Hao Qian's, but now this guy had surpassed him. However, a short while later, his fighting spirit was reignited. Since Hao Qian could advance to mid-level God Realm, then how could he, who had the purest dragon's bloodline, remain stagnant? At this moment, Hao Qian didn't even spare a glance at Firth. His gaze was fixed on Ron. The hostility in his eyes intensified as a powerful, oppressive momentum burst out from his body. Watching this, everyone's anxious hearts rose to their throats. This Hao Qian was already a mid-level God Realm. What was he planning to do? Ron, although now, I might not be your opponent, but I believe that in the near future, I will become an existence that surpasses you. Hao Qian said slowly. Ron smiled faintly, nodding calmly. Good. I'll be waiting for your challenge. Only then did everyone breathe in relief. Noah's group rested on the shore for a while, wringing their clothes dry and eating their fill. Soon, the sky turned dark and the purple moon hung high in the sky. Perhaps this area was the Nile giant crocodile's territory, but there were no other strange beasts that came to disturb them. Everyone sat around the fire, deep in their own thoughts. Whereas Hao Qian, who had broken through to mid-level God Realm, closed his eyes and entered into a state of cultivation. Ron, there are strange beasts everywhere here. What should we do? Frigga asked as she fiddled with the fire. Indeed, the strength of a low-level God Realm expert was too dangerous in a high-rank alien plane like the Land of Exile. Any random exotic beast here was at least a low-level God Realm expert. Moreover, they came in large groups. Noah's group, who didn't have much combat experience, was no match for them at all. I think we shouldn't continue moving forward. Ron pondered for a moment. We should find a place to hide and cultivate while hunting strange beasts. At the very least, we should wait until our strength has increased. Ron's opinion received unanimous agreement from everyone. Hao Qian's breakthrough today also gave everyone confidence. Everyone believed that with their talent, breaking through to mid-level God Realm shouldn't be a difficult matter. Inside the space crack on the Noah mainland, Noah was leisurely sipping tea. Since all the God Realm masters on the Noah mainland had left, he felt a little bored. His servant, Mary, was holding a tray, standing at the side with a respectful expression. As someone who had followed Noah for many years, she was very clear about Lord Noah's preferences. Those guys should have started their training by now, right? Noah said with a smile. I'm guessing they must have run into some trouble. Mary smiled faintly, her eyebrows raised. This is something they must go through. Just as Lord said, if they don't go through cruel battles, how can they grow? These guys, each and every one of them thinks that God Realm strength is amazing. Mary's turbid eyes shone brightly. The servant uniform on her body fluttered without any wind. exuding a powerful aura. This Mary was actually a genuine God Realm Master. It turned out that the Mary that Ron and the others saw was merely a facade. In reality, Mary's strength far surpassed any of them. How could someone who could follow Lord Noah be ordinary? Mary thought for a moment, then sighed. Lord Noah, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time, but I still can't understand. Why would you have such a plan to hand over the Noah mainland Iran? Hearing this, Noah sighed again. He gently placed the cup in his hand on the wooden table, stood up, and looked at Mary. Mary, perhaps you can't understand now, but you will one day. No, I won't understand. Before Noah could finish speaking, Mary had already screamed, her expression agitated. Lord Noah, your strength is already at the peak of humanity. Even in the mortal plane, you are one of the best. With your strength, you can definitely protect this entire continent. Mary stared into Noah's eyes. Lord Noah, what are you afraid of? The air was a little stiff. In front of the tall floor-to-ceiling window, Mary met Noah's gaze without fear. Her expression was solemn. Chapter 747. The Scourge Church's Undercity was just like its name. Due to the canopy of necromancy, the entire city was shrouded in darkness. Even on the brightest summer day, the sky above the city was still overcast, which added to the uniqueness of Undercity. Undercity was as bustling as ever, especially the underground streets that extended in all directions, which now covered the entire city. Compared to the deserted surface, this was a completely different world. In the center of the underground city, which should have been the most bustling place in the city, it was abnormally deserted. There were very few pedestrians on the wide streets, and from time to time, a team of heavily armored Scourge Church soldiers would pass by. They were all undead swordsmen who cultivated the power of the soul. This was Ron's residence. Although he wasn't on the Noah continent at the moment, this area was naturally classified as one of the most protected areas. In the middle of the street, a huge statue stood proudly. It was a scene of Ron casting a spell. He raised his bone staff high, his black necromancer robes fluttering in the wind. He seemed to be chanting something, his dark eyes revealing a resolute expression. This was Ron's statue. Every year, on Ron's birthday, it would be open for members of the church to come and pay their respects. Many of them were students of the Calamity Academy. The base of the statue was engraved with a large number of words, recounting Ron's heroic deeds, including his leading of the Scourge Church's army to attack the Holy See, as well as his leading of the continent's powerhouses against the Burning Legion. Ron was now the #1 powerhouse on the Noah continent. His deeds were widely spread. In a few inconspicuous noble houses, Ron's family and his 3 beautiful wives lived. In a small courtyard, a beautiful young woman sat at a square table. She had fair skin and a pretty face. Her long blue hair hung down loosely. She held a baby who was not even a month old in her arms and had a sweet smile on her face. Saya, my little baby, your stinky father abandoned you as soon as you were born. We don't want him either, the young woman muttered to herself. Although she sounded like she was blaming Saya, there was no trace of blame on her smiling face. On the contrary, her face was filled with a loving smile. This young woman was Kadina, Ron's wife. At this time, she was not wearing the blue and white magician robe she usually wore. Instead, she was wearing a noble silk nightgown. Her graceful figure set off her beautiful face, making people unable to bear to blaspheme her. She was a powerful water Saint Magus. She didn't have the glamour of a sacred domain expert. At this moment, she was like a little wife, beautiful and gentle. The baby in her arms closed his eyes and listened to his mother's sweet complaints. He fell asleep quietly, his long eyelashes fluttering, just like his mother. Saya was his name. He was Ron's second child. Your Highness, please rest assured. I believe that the young master will return as soon as possible. A plump servant comforted her, her expression full of respect. That plump servant was a nanny from Kadina's hometown, the Kingdom of Doro. She was here to take care of the little prince, so she always called Kadena Your Highness. I hope so. Kadena silently sighed. She had always dreamed of being a superhero when she was a girl, but in her eyes, it wasn't as beautiful as reality. Ron was admittedly a brilliant, peerless expert. He led the Scourge Church's army to destroy the Burning Legion and defeated Sophia. He was revered by all the people of the continent. But as his wife, Kadena slowly tasted the bitterness of being a superhero and a peerless expert. Not only was she worried all day long, but because of Noah's order, she went to a distant plane to gain experience. She didn't even get to see the birth of her son. Only Kadena knew the taste of this. I wonder how Ron is now. Kadena raised her head, a pair of beautiful eyes faintly looking at the sky. Her expression was full of anxiety. Like many wives of mercenaries, the noble Princess Kadena was also waiting for news of her husband. Perhaps she would wait for bad news, or perhaps there would be no news at all. There had always been various versions of the story circulating in the mercenary world. It was said that a mercenary went out on a training mission for 3 years without any news. Everyone thought that he was dead, but his wife didn't believe it and kept waiting at home. She waited for a full 10 years. 10 years later, his wife finally gave up and married another man from the same village. On the day of their wedding, her husband, who was a mercenary, had just returned home. It turned out that he was separated from his companions during a mission. In a dangerous plane, all his companions thought that he was dead. He was the only one who survived. The life of a mercenary was like a speck of dust. When a strong wind blew, it would disappear without a trace. Even if he died, there would be no sound. Perhaps the mother's heartstrings touched the baby in her arms. His little face trembled, and he cried loudly. Wah! This made the inexperienced Kadena flustered. Your Highness, let me do it. When the plump female servant saw this, she reached out and took the baby. She pulled open the front of her clothes, revealing a pair of plump breasts. She then stuffed her nipple into the baby's mouth. The baby held the nipple in his mouth and immediately stopped crying. He then fell asleep quietly. You still have a way. Kadena heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at her son's peaceful little face, she reached out to pinch it and said softly, Saya, you have to grow up quickly and be like your father. Become a great hero who can support both heaven and earth. Spring left and autumn came. Summer left and winter arrived. Unknowingly, 7 years had passed. In the land of exile, the cold wind whistled, and the entire land was covered in ice and snow. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly sounded, breaking the silence of the forest. Haha, I broke through. I finally broke through. The God Realm Dragon Turtlebaugh Boo's excited voice spread to every corner of the forest, startling countless birds. Babu had reason to be excited. 7 years. It had used a total of 7 years to break through to mid-level God Realm. This realm had troubled it for several thousand years. 7 years, to a God Realm master, was merely the blink of an eye. If it weren't for Babu's diligent cultivation, he wouldn't have broken through to mid-level God Realm in merely 7 years. Perhaps even 700 years wouldn't have been enough. When one's strength reached God Realm, the lifespan of all living beings would be greatly increased. For example, Babu, living for several tens of thousands of years, was nothing difficult. Babu, what the hell are you doing, old man? Making a big fuss. Be careful not to attract powerful God Realm beasts. At this time, a thunderous voice came from another mountain peak, splashing cold water on Babu's happy mood. The God Realm Master, Black Dragon Firth Ra's spiritual sense spread out to every corner of the forest. His majestic king's aura was released continuously, causing an invisible pressure to descend on the forest. Hearing this, Babu stomped his feet in anger. His granny, R.A. Firth Raz, I'm not afraid of you anymore. Don't forget, I'm a mid-level God Realm now. Who do you think you are? Go die to the side for me. Only now did Babu remember that he was already a mid-level God Realm, many times stronger than R.A. Firth Ra's early-level God Realm. Realizing this, Babu's courage was boosted, and he exhaled the foul air in his chest. R.A. Firth Ra's voice turned icy cold. In the next second, a swish sound was heard as his figure appeared in front of Babu. R.A. Firth R.A. was clad in a black robe, his hands clasped behind his back. His cold gaze swept over Babu, exuding the majesty of a high-level magic beast. Babu, you're getting more and more presumptuous. Do you have the guts to repeat what you said just now? WH what? Seeing R.A. Firth Ra's appearance, Babu froze on the spot, as if he was struck by lightning. Judging from the intense darkness element aura exuding from R.A. Firth Ra's body, he was already a mid-level god realm. When did you also advance to mid-level god realm? Babu stared incredulously at R.A. Firth Ra's face. He no longer had the awe-inspiring aura he had when he had just advanced to mid-level god realm. He stuttered, his voice trembling. Mid-level god realm? TCH. R.A. Firth Ra's expression was filled with disdain. Babu, you've only just advanced to mid-level god realm. It's really too slow, he smiled faintly. To tell you the truth, 7 years ago, that is 3 months after that Hao Qin guy broke through, I already advanced to mid-level god realm. With your talent, you dare to show off in front of me? Hearing R.A. Huang's words, Babu's face drooped. The joy from earlier had vanished without a trace, replaced by flattery. Of course, how can I compare to Boss? Boss being stronger is only natural. Babu had part of the dragon's bloodline and could be considered a part of the dragons. However, he had been suppressed by R.A. Firth R.A. for a long time, so he had always been unconvinced. When he thought that he had surpassed R.A. Firth R.A., he started acting presumptuously. R.A. Firth R.A., Babu, what's wrong? At this time, another figure flew over. It was another god realm magic beast, Di Luo, who had the face of a lion, the body of a human, and the tail of a phoenix. He flew across the sky and landed in his human form. Seeing the two of them, Di Luo laughed heartily. Those who don't know might think that you two are going to fight. I'm here to mediate. Di Luo, long time no see. R.A. Firth R.A. nodded indifferently in greeting. What? Babu was once again dumbfounded. He rubbed his eyes, shaking as he reached out a finger. Di Luo, you're also a mid-level god realm master? Isn't it just a mid-level god realm master? Not worth mentioning. Di Luo waved his hand modestly. I broke through to mid-level god realm 2 years ago. Compared to Lord Firth R.A., I'm still a long way off. R.A. Firth R.A. smiled faintly, saying nonchalantly, I heard that Frigga broke through to mid-level god realm 6 years ago. And there's also Undine. She broke through 4 years ago. I saw her in the forest some time ago. I even chatted with her for a while. Hearing this, Babu's face was filled with dejection. In other words, he was the last one to break through to mid-level god realm. In this vast, endless forest, everyone was separated from each other to cultivate and break through. Other than using spiritual sense to communicate, they didn't contact each other. Thus, they weren't clear about their companion's situation. Due to these years of abandoning everything to focus on cultivation, each of them had achieved good results. In the land of exile, there were the most ferocious, mutated beasts. Every day, they lived in the midst of battles with mutated beasts. Their nerves were stretched taut at every moment. In the midst of battle, they slowly comprehended their realm, and their strength grew at a rapid pace. Of course, this was something that couldn't be achieved even if one spent hundreds or thousands of years on Noah mainland. Alerted by the two's movements, Frigga, Hao Qin, and Undine rushed over from another corner of the forest. Seeing everyone present, they were very surprised. Fairy dragon Frigga was clad in a white robe, her long sleeves fluttering in the wind. Coupled with her cold face, she resembled a fairy descending from the heavens. Just like R.A. Firth R.A., she exuded the majestic aura of a ruler. The other figure was Undine, clad in a dark green natural magic robe. Her appearance didn't change much, but her long green hair had turned snowy white. Just like R.A. Firth R.A. had said, both of them had reached mid-level god realm. Seeing that everyone had advanced to mid-level god realm, The little bit of pride in Babu's heart vanished without a trace, replaced by a sense of defeat. The current Noah mainland adventure team strength was more than a level higher than before. Even if they ran into a group of powerful mutated beasts, they wouldn't need to flee in panic. I didn't expect everyone to be here. Undine spoke. With a light wave of her hand, specks of green light sprinkled down, dispelling the cold air. With her, as the center, the area around her became as warm as spring. Undine's control over nature force had risen another level. Seems like there's one less. Chapter 748. I'm here. Just as Hao Qin's words fell, Ron's voice sounded from the side. Black fog appeared out of thin air above a rock protruding from the ground. A short while later, Ron's silhouette emerged from the fog. Everyone exchanged a glance, noticing the astonishment in each other's eyes. Ron had arrived a long time ago, yet no one noticed him. Could it be that his strength, high-level god realm, an unfamiliar name, flashed across everyone's mind? Could it be that Ron had advanced to high-level god realm? The black robe on Ron's body was slightly tattered, but it was still clean and tidy. However, the white undead armor covering his shoulders and chest were slightly damaged. It seemed like Ron had gone through a lot of battles in these years. Compared to 7 years ago, Ron had matured a little, looking like a resolute middle-aged man. After all, he was nearing 40 years old this year. His eyes were more reserved, without a trace of spirit. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary person who had never cultivated before. But everyone knew that this was a kind of returning to one's original state, just like Lord Noah. Ron, could it be that you've already advanced to high-level god realm? In the end, it was Frigga who couldn't resist asking. Ron glanced at Frigga, a faint smile on his face, shaking his head calmly. No. Unlike others who had broken through to the critical point, although Ron's strength had improved a lot in these 7 years, his realm did not advance. For some reason, the more Ron cultivated, the further he felt he was from the higher level of high-level god realm. Sure enough, one's strength can't be improved overnight. Breaking through to high-level god realm will probably take several hundred years. Ron thought to himself. Little did he know that in other people's eyes, he was already a monstrous existence. Reaching mid-level god realm before the age of 40 was already shocking. If he advanced to high-level god realm, then who knew how many masters he would scare to death? Fortunately, everyone was already used to Ron's miraculous feats. Even if he really did break through to high-level god realm, it wouldn't be strange. On the path of cultivation, anything could happen. Everyone chatted for a while. Perhaps it was because they had not seen each other for a few years. The atmosphere was a little strange. In the end, Undine proposed to return to the Noah continent first. Unexpectedly, this proposal was unanimously approved by everyone. After leaving the Noah continent for so long, Undine was a little worried about the elves. Ron also missed his 3 wives and daughters. Before leaving, Kadena was already pregnant. Perhaps the child was quite big now, but he didn't know if it was a son or a daughter. Thinking of this, Ron's desire to return became even stronger. Looking at the gazes of the crowd, he nodded and said, "All right, let's go back now." Cold winds howled and snow fluttered down. The entire world was dyed white. Ron and the others traveled through the forest. Although the current weather wasn't good, it wasn't too much of a problem for Divine Realm powerhouses. It was just that they couldn't fly, which was a bit of a pity. On the way back, as expected, Ron's group ran into another pack of bloodthirsty frenzy wolves. But this time, the Noah squad that had improved their strength was fearless, bravely meeting the wolves head-on. In less than 15 minutes, they had routed the pack of bloodthirsty frenzy wolves. The wolves either died or fled. In the forest, the ground was littered with wolf corpses. On the snowy ground, crimson blood flowed, creating puffs of green smoke. 1 to 3, a total of 181 wolf corpses and a leader mid-level god realm. After a simple count, Frigga turned to face Ron, smiling brightly. Ron nodded. The last time he came here, The mid-level god realm bloodthirsty frenzy wolf leader was killed by him. Who would have thought that in a short 7 years, they would have a new leader? Was a mid-level god realm really that worthless? Ron looked around and said solemnly, "Let's not take these corpses away. The bloodthirsty frenzy wolves' fur and meat aren't worth much. The most valuable thing is their magic cores. We'll just take these magic cores away." No one had any objections. Ron extended his hand, and a corrosive light green gas silently spread out. As if it had a mind of its own, it slowly attached itself to the wolf corpses. At this time, the bloodthirsty berserk wolves' corpses emitted bursts of green smoke. Before long, they turned into a pool of blood, leaving behind a shiny black object on the ground. That was the exotic beast's magic core. The group carefully collected the magic cores on the ground, preparing to sell them at the stronghold. These were the magic cores of God Realm, strange beasts. Each one of them was worth a fortune. Strange beast magic cores had a wide range of uses. They could be used as materials to upgrade weapons and equipment, increasing the success rate. They could also be used to concoct potions, and they could even be eaten. In these 7 years, Ron and the others hunted strange beasts every day. Each of them had accumulated a large amount of beast corpses, magic cores, and other materials. As long as they sold them at the stronghold, they could earn a fortune. The amount of wealth was not something the people of the Noah mainland could imagine. As Noah opened up the space channel, more and more experts from the sacred domain of the Noah mainland began to enter other planes, embarking on a new journey. However, hunting strange beasts from the God Realm was still an impossible task. We're almost at the interplanar transfer point. Undine wiped the sweat off her face, smiled, and pointed to the distance. She had already seen the obelisk of the temporary stronghold. Thinking that they were about to return to the Noah mainland, everyone couldn't contain their excitement and hastened their steps. As soon as they stepped into the planar teleportation point made of yellow earth and stone, everyone was stunned. The once bustling interplanar teleportation point was now empty and desolate. "Wait, what's going on?" Ron suddenly became nervous. He pressed his hand on the space bag at his waist and looked around vigilantly. Did we go in the wrong direction? Babu scratched his head, puzzled. "We're going in the right direction," Firth said in a deep voice. "What happened here? It seems like it's been destroyed." Everyone looked around. Indeed, the walls here were dilapidated, and there were traces of war everywhere. Flames had scorched the hard green stones, and the ground was littered with the bones of various races. It seemed like they had been dead for a long time. A cruel massacre once took place here. Undine stared at a skeleton for a long time. She reached out and gently stroked the cut made by a sharp weapon on the skeleton's arm, frowning. "Massacre," Ron muttered to himself. At this moment, he suddenly had an ominous premonition. He hurriedly said, "Quick, let's go to the interplanar transfer point to take a look." Everyone was shocked and immediately ran to the interplanar transfer point. When they arrived at the interplanar transfer point, they couldn't help but gasp. As Ron expected, the interplanar transfer point had been destroyed. The spatial magic stones scattered on the ground were like metal that had lost their luster. They were dark and inconspicuous. Who did it? Chapter 749. Destroying an interplanar teleportation formation and leaving people homeless was truly abominable. However, what was even more strange was who had done it. Could it be an alien beast? Diluo pondered for a moment before saying. In the Amros continent, it was not uncommon for alien beasts to destroy interplanar teleportation formations. "No, alien beasts don't know how to use weapons," Undine retorted. "Look." As she spoke, Undine pointed to the ground. Everyone looked in the direction she pointed, only to see the skeleton of a humanoid creature lying quietly on the ground not far away. The corpse had been dead for a long time, and its flesh had long been eaten clean by insects and mosquitoes, leaving only a skeleton. The skeleton's mouth was wide open, and an expression of extreme fear appeared on its face, as if it had seen something terrifying. "HM?" Ron's gaze focused, and he squatted down to pick up a section of the skeleton. It was the skeleton's arm, and it looked like it had been chopped off by someone. It was covered with ghastly sword marks. Just as Undine had said, the owner of this skeleton had been killed by someone else, and not an alien beast. If it had been killed by an alien beast, then these greedy and cruel fellows wouldn't have left a single trace of the corpse behind. Undine took a deep breath, calmed herself down, and said in a clear voice, "What I can be sure of is that this was a premeditated massacre. This massacre took place at night, and each of those assassins possessed great strength. They ambushed and killed everyone." Everyone was shocked by Undine's words, and they turned to look at her. Frigga couldn't help but ask, "High Priestess, how did you know?" "Me?" Undine smiled, flicking her snow-white hair. She squatted down and gently stroked a stalk of grass on the ground. "It was this that told me. A year ago, it witnessed everything with its own eyes. Everyone was filled with admiration. It was said that the power of nature could communicate with plants. Without a doubt, Undine's strength had already reached this level. The planar teleportation point wasn't that big. It connected all the major planes and the main plane, including the adventurers who came to the exiled land, the residents who lived here, and the merchants who bought and sold things here. A rough calculation showed that there were at least a few 100,000 people here. It was the size of a city. The residents of this city were not to be underestimated. From what Ron and the others had observed when they arrived, every one of the city's powerhouses was at least at the Sacred Domain realm. There were even quite a few God's Domain powerhouses among them. As for the powerhouses below the Sacred Domain realm, sorry, but they were not qualified to set foot in this city. How powerful would it take to wipe out all the experts of the Sacred Domain and above in this city? Even the Burning Legion that invaded the Noah continent couldn't do it, right? Everyone's hearts were filled with shock, and they all fell silent. To them, the other plane was indeed a terrifying place. The God's Domain powerhouses were really too insignificant. Rather than saying that they were praying for this tragedy, it was better to say that they were secretly grieving for their own misfortune. The planar teleportation point was destroyed, and they couldn't return. They could only admit that they were unlucky. That's not right. At this time, Frigga shouted. Her expression was grave. She looked at Undine and retorted, "According to what the High Priestess said, there were at least a few 100,000 people in the planar teleportation point. Then, where did all the corpses go?" I used my spiritual sense to scan the entire planar teleportation point, but other than this skeleton, all the other skeletons seemed to have disappeared. The entire planar teleportation point was wiped clean. I didn't find anything. Frigga stared at Undine. My opinion is the exact opposite of the High Priestess. This massacre must have been done by the strange beasts. Only the strange beasts would eat all the corpses clean, leaving nothing behind. I believe that the forces of nature wouldn't lie to me. Undine frowned, looking somewhat dissatisfied. She raised her voice. High Priestess, do you think that the murder would take away these useless corpses? Frigga retorted. Those aren't just one or two corpses, but hundreds of thousands of corpses. Could it be that the murderer put them all in the space bag and transported them away? But I believe that the forces of nature wouldn't lie to me. Undine still insisted on her opinion. Just like that, the two of them argued, but no one could convince the other. Stop arguing. It's useless to argue. At this time, Firth lifted his eyelids, stopping the two of them from arguing. He glanced at Ron. Ron, what do we do now? At this moment, Ron was squatting there, picking up the bone of the humanoid creature and carefully examining it. No one knew what he was thinking. He only came back to his senses after Firth asked him a second time. Looks like we can only go to another planar teleportation point. Ron silently threw down the bone in his hand, raised his face, and said, Everyone thought about it, and other than this, there was no other way. They could only agree and silently walked out of the door of the planar teleportation point. They were only one step away from returning to the Noah continent, but because the planar teleportation point was destroyed, they couldn't make the trip. Thinking of this, everyone was a little dispirited, but there was nothing they could do about it. Ron walked a few steps and suddenly turned his head back. He stared at the skeleton just now and was absent-minded for a moment. Why? Why do I feel a power from that skeleton? This power is so familiar. For some reason, Ron had a bad premonition. He felt that the destruction of the planar teleportation point wasn't a coincidence. It was like a huge net quietly opening up and enveloping them. At night, the dark red moon hung faintly in the sky. Even though it was already spring, one could still feel the bone-piercing cold. In the temporary planar teleportation point in the land of exile, everyone had already entered dreamland. One magic lamp after another shone weakly in the cold wind, emitting bits of light, decorating the land shrouded in darkness with Guangming. However, no one in the planar teleportation point knew that they were being watched by someone else. Under the dark red moon, a young man stood impressively. His whole body was shrouded in a black robe. His sleeves revealed a section of his arm, and the skin on his arm showed a trace of demonic paleness. He was quietly standing on a protruding rock at the edge of a cliff, his dark eyes quietly sizing up the planar teleportation point. Gradually, a trace of murderous intent appeared on the young man's emotionless face. "Master." At this moment, a deep voice came from behind the black-robed young man. A 2-meter-tall man strode out from behind him and knelt on one knee with a respectful expression. This is the last stronghold. As long as we destroy this planar teleportation point, then everyone in the land of exile will be unable to return. This way, our plan can be realized." The black-robed young man muttered to himself. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and a trace of shrewdness appeared in his eyes. "From now onwards, they only have one choice." "Don't worry, master." The burly man behind him raised his head and revealed a sinister smile. "Let us force them to make this choice." Hula, hula. The forest began to shake violently. In an instant, countless heads emerged from the dense forest, each with a strong, killing intent on their faces. In this open forest, there were tens of thousands of people lying in ambush. "Master, we're all ready to attack at any time." At this moment, another burly man shouted loudly. "Very good." The black-robed young man smiled slightly. "If this is the case, our brother should be able to come out soon, and our bird Lord Utaris." "Long live Lord Utaris!" The burly man called Apps shouted loudly, his voice startling many sleeping birds. Together with the voices of tens of thousands of people, it shook the mountains. In an instant, a surging killing intent enveloped the entire stronghold like an overwhelming dark cloud. "What's going on? There seems to be a lot of people outside. Are new adventurers here?" The people in the stronghold woke up from their deep slumber and communicated with their spiritual senses. For some reason, everyone had a bad feeling in their hearts. It was as if they were being targeted by an enemy. All the adventurers had this feeling. "Roar!" App stood up and roared loudly. He stretched out his thick, bucket-like arms and hammered his own chest, making a bang-bang sound. With an earth-shattering roar, Apu's body began to undergo a huge change. His body swelled up like a balloon, and at the same time, a large amount of black hair grew on his body. His ordinary human face also became extremely ferocious. Not long after, a 7-meter-tall, giant gorilla covered in long black hair stood at the peak of the mountain. He hammered his own chest continuously, letting out earth-shattering roars. Different from ordinary gorillas, App's chest, back, and crotch were covered in silver scales. At first glance, he looked like an armored gorilla. "What is that?" In the stronghold, a sacred domain expert pointed to the sky and shouted. His face was filled with fear. He could feel the powerful pressure from the other party. That was the power of a God Realm expert, a God Realm magical beast, armored devil ape, and a mid-level God Realm at that. What the hell, what are they trying to do? A God Realm expert gritted his teeth and said, "Are they going to attack here? Don't joke around. This is a stronghold." At this time, another red-haired God Realm expert seemed to have thought of something. His voice trembled as he said, "Could it be they want to boom? At this time, a violent explosion sounded not far away, and everyone's nerves were stretched taut. However, the voice that followed caused everyone in the stronghold to panic. Not good. Not good. The interplanar transmission array has been. The interplanar transmission array has been destroyed. What? The news of the interplanar transmission array being destroyed was no less than a sudden clap of thunder. This meant that no one could return through the interplanar transmission array. In an instant, the stronghold became chaotic. Haha, it's going well. Just as I expected. The black-robed young man laughed. He was very satisfied with the consequences of his actions. That's right, they were the ones who destroyed the interplanar transmission array. These people had been hiding in the crowd all this time, only revealing themselves when the array was activated. At this time, some of the vigilant adventurers saw that the situation was bad and began to plan their escape. However, even more people were in a mess, running around in all directions. The black-robed young man's smile gradually disappeared, replaced by a cold expression. With a wave of his black robe, his white fingers revealed a bone-chilling coldness. Chapter 750. Long howls could be heard from the dense forest, as if a large group of wild beasts were pouncing towards this place. Black and agile figures shuttled through the forest, and soon, thousands of figures were standing on the stone walls of the temporary stronghold. The armored devil ape Apps stood outside the tall stone walls, its huge body casting a long shadow under the dark red moonlight. Oh my god, it's the armored devil ape. A mid-level God Realm powerhouse. Run. The appearance of the armored devil ape caused panic in the temporary stronghold. The armored devil ape, a God Realm magical beast, was the pinnacle of the magical beasts. It was extremely talented, possessing the strength of the sacred domain at birth, and reaching the God Realm when it reached adulthood. The armored devil ape was violent and aggressive by nature, and its strength was considerable. When an armored devil ape full of murderous intent appeared in front of you, what would be your first reaction? That's right, run. Some of the weaker adventurers with faster reactions had already seen that the situation was not good and began to run, while the stronger adventurers remained unmoved. As a result, the temporary stronghold became even more panicked. Apps was quite satisfied with the chaos his appearance had caused, and a cold smile appeared on his ugly face. As long as we destroy this place, Master's plan will be more than half completed. When the time comes, we'll go greet Lord Eudalis. Finishing his words, he squatted down slightly and made a running motion. His huge iron palms stepped on the ground, and the sound of metal rubbing against each other was ear-piercing. Apps smiled coldly, and his eyes flashed. At this time, his legs suddenly kicked back, and his body shot up like an arrow, slamming into the temporary stone walls of the stronghold. Boom! A loud sound was heard. An earth-shattering sound was heard, and Apps used his hard body to smash a big hole in the temporary wall. Rocks flew everywhere, and smoke and dust rose. Bastard, he's killing his way in. Run, go to hell. Some wanted to escape, some wanted to resist, and the stronghold was in chaos. Apu roared as he slammed his fist onto the ground with a heavy thud. Boom! A huge force resounded through the sky, and under the tyrannical power, it spread out in the form of shock waves. Bang! 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 Apps's punch had the same effect as Hao Qin's shockwave ripple power. It blasted away the surrounding powerhouses. Brothers, let's do it. Don't leave a single one alive. Kill! Following the Apps command, the tens of thousands of powerhouses waiting outside swarmed in. Boom! 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 In the temporary stronghold, fierce battles broke out everywhere. Countless magic bullets, light balls, arrows, and other long-range attacks exploded in every corner of the city. The burning flames illuminated the faces of the invaders. The slaughter played a beautiful symphony in the quiet night. Ayo, ayo, ayo. The shouts broke the tranquility of the night. In the darkness, black figures were running around in all directions, launching a massacre in the temporary stronghold made of piles of stones. Even the weakest of the invading enemies had the strength of a God Realm Master. Even in the main plane, some of them were high-level God Realm Masters. Under this wave of well-prepared and well-trained enemies, the temporary stronghold's resistance melted like snow in spring. Kill! 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 A murderous aura pervaded the stronghold. Burning flames lit up half the sky. Lightning, hailstones, and other high-level large-scale magic spells rained down on the temporary stronghold, causing waves of explosions. With the interplanar transmission array destroyed, the adventurers in the temporary stronghold had nowhere to go. They could only break out of the encirclement. A red-haired realm of the god's powerhouse was bathed in blood. He frequently brandished his single-handed sword, causing one enemy after another to fall into a pool of blood. If one paid close attention, they would discover that the sword in his hand was actually a divine artifact. However, the red-haired God Realm Master could no longer distinguish between enemies and companions. There was only one word in his mind, and that was break out of the encirclement. Ding! The red-haired God Realm Master only felt his sword collide with his opponent's, and the sound of an intense collision rang out. A huge force swept over him, causing him to stagger back several steps. The red-haired God Realm Master took a closer look. Kataro, it's you? The newcomer was none other than his companion, Kataro, who had come to the land of exile with him. Wadi? Oh, Tiana, it's great to find you. Kataro's face lit up when he saw the red-haired Wadi. He was a support class, and killing was not his forte. Kataro immediately buffed Wadi with several support skills and healed his injuries. All right, Wadi, hurry up and get me out of here. Wadi's injuries were all healed, and he was buffed with several defense and attack skills. At this moment, he felt full of strength. Okay, Wadi answered readily. Follow me. We'll get out of here together. Kill! Boom! 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 Wadi, who was in peak condition, exploded with powerful combat power. Using the power of the divine weapon, he quickly killed his way out. Heavens, we're finally out. Wadi, you're amazing. If possible, I want to give you a kiss. Kataro's face was full of admiration. Get out of here. You damn gay. Wadi felt a little relieved when he finally got out of the temporary stronghold. However, when he heard Kataro's words, goosebumps rose. You don't have to be so fierce. Kataro wanted to flatter Wadi, but he did not expect to be scolded by Wadi. He pouted, and his face was full of grievance. Wadi ignored him and stood up. He looked at the burning temporary stronghold not far away and muttered, "Who are these guys? Why do they ambush us?" I don't know. Kataro also returned to his normal state. But these ambushers are of all races, and there are many demonic beasts. It seems like a bandit group that was formed temporarily, but they are very strong. Bandit group? Wolde shuddered. He seemed to remember something, and his eyes widened. That's right, Kitello. Did you notice that those guys who fought with us, their arms, they seem to have a red band wrapped around them? Red band, now that Katayo mentioned it. He also recalled that the people who ambushed him all had red ribbons tied to their right arms. It was just that the situation back then had been too chaotic, so he hadn't paid attention to them. I think I know who they are, Kataro said seriously. I think I know too. Wadi finally remembered that name that made his expression change. They're the Red Silk Army. The Red Silk Army. Kataro could not help but tremble when he heard Wadi's words. It's really them? It seems that there is no mistake. Wadi took a deep breath. They united the powerhouses of all the major races and once moved unhindered through the various planes, instigating countless wars. But in the end, they were annihilated by the combined forces of the main plane. Right? Wadi seemed to remember something. Kataro, do you remember where the leader of the Red Silk Army was imprisoned after they were defeated? Kataro also remembered when he heard Wadi's words. His expression became incomparably terrified. I think it's the Banished Lands. Bartolo's planar prison. Damn it. What are these bastards trying to do? Wait, Bartolo's planar prison. Kataro was stunned for a moment before he remembered something. Could it be that they want to use us, Kiki? Very smart. You guessed right. Just as Wadi finished speaking, a voice came from the darkness. In this silent night, filled with killing intent, it was very abrupt. Who? Who's there? Wadi and Kataro jumped in fright. With a whoosh, the two of them drew their weapons. Kiki, along with a cold voice, a shadow flashed in the darkness. Not long after, a young man with long hair and a pale complexion slowly flashed out. He wore a black robe with a red belt tied around his shoulder. On the red belt, there was a burning symbol in the shape of swastika, which was particularly eye-catching. Chapter 751. Kill. The two of them saw that the situation was bad. They looked at each other and activated their killing intent. In that instant, a powerful aura erupted, illuminating the surroundings like the stars in the night sky. In the silent forest, fighting spirit burned fiercely. They used their strongest killing moves right from the start. The two of them cooperated well, showing the qualities of a mature planar adventurer. The powerful aura blew at the young man's clothes like a gust of wind, but there was no panic on his face. He took off his hood slightly, revealing a pale and delicate face. The corners of his mouth curled up, and a cold smile appeared on his face. "You think you can do it?" The black-robed young man muttered to himself. "Maybe we've been silent for too long. The world has long forgotten how terrifying we are." As the black-robed young man spoke, large amounts of black fog appeared on his body. A sinister skeleton vaguely appeared on his pale face. At this moment, the black fog had unknowingly spread throughout the entire forest. Like soldiers who had received an order, it quickly surrounded the two of them. Walter and Catello were shocked. "You're an undead." Crack, crack, crack. Countless skeletons climbed up from the ground. They wore thick armor and held weapons as they staggered towards the two of them. "Die!" Walter clenched his teeth and swung his longsword. Like thunder, lightning flashed in the forest. But in the next moment, Walter's movement stopped. Extreme fear appeared on his face, because he discovered that his body was no longer listening to him. At this moment, the lowest-level skeleton leisurely walked over. Cold sweat dripped down Walter's body. He wanted to shout. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he could not utter a single word. Crack! The little skeleton swung his bone sword and cut off Walter's head. Even in death, Walter did not expect that he would die at the hands of the most insignificant little skeleton. Walter's soul floated out of his body and flew towards the mysterious black-robed man. The black-robed man took a deep breath and devoured Walter's soul. He had a delighted expression on his face. This extremely strange scene scared Catello out of his wits. He no longer had any will to fight. He screamed and fled for his life. At this moment, the black fog that was floating everywhere became active again. Countless black spiritual snakes surged towards Catello. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The white bone spear pierced through Catello's chest. His eyes widened in horror as he struggled a few times before collapsing to the ground powerlessly. Behind him, the black-robed young man's shadow slowly appeared. "Why kill me?" He stared at the black-robed young man, as if trying to imprint his appearance in his mind. "Because you know too much." The black-robed young man smiled and turned around to answer. Catello did not ask any more questions because he had taken his last breath. "Master, we have completed our mission." It was unknown when the iron-armored demonic ape had returned to the side of the mysterious black-robed young man. Just like the black-robed young man, a red band was tied around his arm, revealing a black swastika symbol. "Very good." The black-robed young man glanced at him with approval in his eyes. "Let's hurry over as well. I believe Lord Utaris will come out soon." The land of exile, the legendary place where sinners were exiled. At the center of the land of exile was the legendary Bartlos planar prison that even powerful gods would pale in fright at the mention of. The Bartlos planar prison was 9 floors deep underground. Every floor was guarded by powerful ancient guardians. From the outside, it looked like a giant castle jutting out from the ground, solemn and strict. It displayed the god's will and supreme prestige. However, the interior of Prison Bartolos was much bigger than it looked from the outside. According to legend, every floor of Prison Bartolos was an independent space. This space was like a huge purgatory, and all the sinners were suffering in this purgatory. Sinners imprisoned in the Bartolos planar prison would never be able to escape. Here, there were absolute spatial laws that contained the will of the overgod. Even a powerful god couldn't break through the spatial laws set up by the overgod and escape. Not only that, outside the Bartolos planar prison, there were several tens of thousands of ancient guardians protecting this place. Each one of them had the strength of mid-level god realm and above. The gigantic magic array continued to operate. There were thousands of massive stone pillars here, and each pillar was engraved with complex and mysterious runes. The runes emitted a faint light as they rotated. The space law, which contained the will of a supreme god, constantly radiated boundless power. In the void, a round black ball floated in the air. An old man with white eyebrows and beard, dressed in black, sat quietly inside it. His legs were crossed, and his eyes were closed, as if he had entered a state of cultivation. The black sphere was about a square foot in size, but the space inside was incomparably vast. This black sphere was the embodiment of the God-space law, and it tightly wrapped around the old man. This black sphere didn't just imprison the old man's body, it also imprisoned his soul, tormenting his soul in endless darkness and emptiness. This was the lowest level of the Bartolos prison. If one had to ask what was the most terrifying punishment in the world, the answer would be darkness. Endless darkness extended in this space, as if time was forgotten. In the darkness, there was nothing could be seen. Darkness, emptiness, and loneliness. In just 3 months, it was enough to torture an ordinary person to the point of insanity. But what if it was a year, 10 years, 100,000 years? 100,000 years, even a god would suffer torment. This old man in black had been imprisoned here for a full 100,000 years. He was the Red Silk Army's leader from 100,000 years ago, whose name caused the gods of the main plane to pale in fright, Utaris. The Red Silk Army's full name was the Red Silk Rebellion Army. It gathered the powerhouses of various races, and their dissatisfaction with the rules set by the major forces of the main plane turned into anger. It burned fiercely in the main plane, and they challenged the major forces. In the end, the Red Silk Army was annihilated by the major forces of the main plane. Their leader, Utaris, and his subordinates were imprisoned here forever as war criminals. 100,000 years had worn away his spirit. In the past, Utaris was a powerhouse who dominated a region in the main plane, but at this moment, he was no different from an ordinary old man. Who would have thought that he had single-handedly set off a storm of blood 100,000 years ago? Time quietly passed like sand. After an unknown amount of time, a thunderous voice suddenly came from the void. Utaris, you're already locked up here, so why are you still learning how to cultivate? Ha! Don't tell me you still want to go out in this lifetime? The thick voice seemed to come from afar, but the tone was full of ridicule. Moreover, accompanying the voice was a supreme pressure that was as powerful as that of a god. The black-clothed old man was unmoved, and he did not even frown. After a long time, he opened his eyes and smiled. His black eyes looked at the void as he spoke indifferently. Maxwell, are you lonely again? Didn't we agree to speak once a month? It seems that the agreed time hasn't arrived yet. The one who spoke was none other than the guardian of Bartolos prison, the ancient dragon Maxwell. At this moment, he was standing on a stone pillar in his human form, looking at Utaris, who was imprisoned in the black sphere with a playful gaze. The outside could not be seen from the black sphere, but Maxwell could clearly see Utaris inside. Maxwell smiled. When I say it's here, it's here. In here, I'm the only law. Hee, the feeling of being imprisoned in the endless dark space isn't good, right? I'll speak to you once a month. This is a great gift to you. As soon as Maxwell finished speaking, Utaris smiled and replied indifferently. That's right. The endless space of darkness imprisoned me, But didn't it also imprison you? In the past 100,000 years, when have you ever left the Bartlos Planar prison? If you weren't bored and lonely, why would you need to talk to me? Shut up. Maxwell was instantly enraged, and his voice rose. Pay attention to your status, damned prisoner. You better remember that I'm the guardian of Bartlos prison. In here, I'm the king. That's right, you're the king here. Utaris smiled, and his body moved as he stood up. But what can you do to me? Dear Maxwell, why don't you come in and teach me a good lesson? Utaris put his hands behind his back, and his cold eyes shone brightly, emitting an intimidating aura. Although the endless dark space imprisoned his body and soul and sealed his six senses, Utaris still accurately grasped Maxwell's position. This came from his intuition. Facing the valiant Utaris, the corner of Maxwell's mouth twitched a few times, and he quickly calmed down. No need, Utaris. I'm no match for you. Maxwell forced a smile on his face. He and Utaris were both divine beasts, but the difference in strength between the two was too great. He was no match for Utaris at all. Maxwell narrowed his eyes. Utaris, I admit that you're stronger than me. But so what? Aren't you still imprisoned here forever? Forever? No. Utaris smiled, and he slowly sat down. The spatial laws created by the supreme gods naturally cannot be defied, but the easiest to break through is the outside. Utaris smiled. As long as you destroy this spatial magic formation, I can come out. Destroy this spatial magic formation? Maxwell's eyes widened, and he suddenly laughed out loud, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Utaris, you said you want to destroy this spatial magic formation? Haha, that's too funny. Don't forget, I, the ancient dragon Maxwell, am the guardian of this place. In my time guarding Bartlos prison, nothing like this has ever happened. I'll get out one day. Utaris smiled. He did not want to waste any more words with Maxwell, so he closed his eyes. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.